of the Building Committee and the Board of Education to discuss what to include and what to set the price cap at for the project here at the end. Ms. Meeker isn't here, so Ms. Hastings, could you call the roll of the board members?
Sure. Mr. Cotton.
Here.
Ms. Robinson.
Here.
Ms. Campbell.
Here.
Ms. Boucher. We were just picking on her.
You're a little rusty, huh?
No.
I'm only teasing you.
Now you've got me at a loss. Ms. Walsh.
Here.
Mr. Richards.
Here.
And I am here. And so we're missing Ms. Higgins and Ms. Meeker at the moment.
All right. I think we're scheduled to start with the report from the Sustainability Committee. So, working group.
I'm assuming that anyone wants to hear just the recommendations that we have. Do I need to give should I give some synopsis of how it went? The minutes are here in the packet. We discussed tax incentives and rebates, the operational life cycle maintenance and replacement costs for a full ground system versus a hybrid system, as well as the solar options of just putting solar, putting solar on the roof, or having canopies that would meet the need for 100% solar. So I think it's important to note that what the committee was told is that we are unlikely to meet 100% of our solar needs, to meet 100% of the electricity needs by just the roof space. So if we would like to meet that 100%, we would need ground or canopy. With that being said, the consensus recommendations of the working group are formal recommendations I will read. The Sustainability Committee recommends option number 1, which is all ground source heat pump. This recommendation is based on the findings of the cost analysis presented by RFS Engineering. It is the least susceptible to volatility in the utility market, safest, most sustainable, and most fiscally responsible. We urge the board to consider this unique moment to capitalize on tax incentives and rebates. We have a second recommendation regarding PV. The Sustainability Committee recommends PV to cover all electricity demand to meet net zero electricity. The committee recommends, at minimum, roof PV arrays are needed. However, we urge the board not to delay on addition of enough PV to cover 100% of electricity costs. We urge the board to consider this unique moment to capitalize on tax incentives and rebates in order to minimize future utility costs. So just to clarify that again, the committee recommends that we aim for 100% of our electricity costs to be met via solar. We are unable to do that with just the roof. What we would like to maximize the roof first, and if able, then to add canopies, which could also be added down the road.
Okay.
Mr. Cotton.
Could you, or somebody who you worked with, discuss the payback time for these options that you're talking about?
Do you want to give a brief overview? We have Joe here from RFS Engineering, and he can briefly walk you through the life cycle cost analysis and the 3 options that were explored.
So this slide goes along with the document you were sent before that outlines the 3 options. Yeah,
Sorry.
Ready?
Yep.
Yep, we're good.
So this slide, it goes along with the 3 options that you were sent before. All right, thank you. Yep. With the ground source heat pumps, hybrid heat pumps, and air-to-water heat pumps. I can go over this in a little detail, or we can move on to the life cycle cost.
I think we can move on to the
Yeah,
life
I'm most
cycle
interested in
costs.
life cycle.
So if you skip ahead 1 slide, this provides a summary of our life cycle cost analysis. It outlines our assumptions. What we did was a 40-year life cycle cost for the 3 options with some escalation rates. We used an average electricity rate that is pretty close to what Runla is currently paying. And we also looked at the different available utility incentives and tax credits. The two tables summarize the main inputs. We have the annual energy cost, first cost, which is the construction cost primarily for the HVAC systems. The next columns show how much we could get for the IRA tax credits. It ranges between 6% on the low side to 40% on the high side. Then with the utility, if the energy use intensity, the EUI, is below a threshold of 25, there's additional rebates available through them. The annual maintenance cost is what we assumed as primarily for the head-end system, so this would be the heat pumps and pumps. Then what we assumed as a replacement cost, that is based on the cost estimates, and that would be happening at year 20 for the air source heat pump and 25 for the geothermal options.
That's how long it would take to need to replace them, 25 years, is that what you're saying?
Yes,
Okay.
20 for the bottom option, the air-to-water heat pump. The reason that we have longer for the geothermal is that all of your equipment would be inside versus the air source heat pump. It's outside, it's exposed to the weather, so we assume it would need to be replaced sooner. The bottom table shows what the first cost would be when you account for the different tax credits and the utility incentive. As you can see, as you go from left to right and also top to bottom, initially the price is fairly similar, although the geothermal ones are more than the air-to-water heat pump. As you add in the tax credits, it flips so that the geothermal options, which are eligible under the IRA, they become the cheaper options. So we start with the 6%, more or less they're all about the same. Then when we hit 40%, which would be probably the best case scenario, the geothermal options become substantially less than the air-to-water heat pump option. We have some graphs to show that summarize our findings, but if there's any questions.
If you could go back to the last slide, Mr. Cotton.
I just, it's quite a swing between 6% and 40% for the IRA tax credit, and I'd like to know what the factors are in there so that we can figure out whether we're gonna get 6% or 40%.
Qualify.
Yeah.
Mr.
Adams,
Adams, sorry.
that's all right. So in the first cost items that are there, where there's basically $1 million difference between the air source and the ground source. That's all construction costs, so that's drilling all the wells, that's all the site work, that's everything that's necessary, pumps and everything, anything that's external. It's not just the stuff in the building, correct?
Right, but it's for the HVAC systems.
Right, which
Yes.
the geothermal is
Yeah.
gonna require, I think, I forget what the
includes
chart
the
was.
wells.
There was a tremendous number of wells that had to be drilled out there.
Yep.
And on one of the other sheets that was in the sustainability thing, it also had a piece there where it was looking at design credits that were in there. I think they had a design fee of 12 million. Is that the total design fee? That was on. The one that was giving all the tax credit information. It was the third line down. Maybe one of those that had design fee 12 million. Is that, and then they were showing some tax credits against that. Was that from the,
Is that the total design fee?
yeah, that's the question. Is that the,
Jack, is Jack?
Yeah, I mean, it wouldn't just be for the mechanical system, it would be the design phase for the entire project.
that's the,
About
enti-
6% of the job.
it's the entire project design fee, right?
Yeah.
And that's what's showing tax credits on that. So will we be eligible for the tax credits for the entire design, or is it only gonna be on mechanical systems? Because that appears to be figured into some of those numbers and
I'm
credits.
sorry, I don't
Right.
have that sheet of paper you're looking at, so if you
Yeah.
I think
pass
this
it
is
over
a
to me.
typo, because if you look at the credit, see how much lower it is? It's like 1/10. I bet this is a typo.
Here, why
It-
don't we
it
show it
could
to
be.
them?
So
Yeah,
it's
it-
page
this-
7 of the.
It's from the sustainability meeting, it's not the cost analysis, it was
Sure,
the
I still don't have that in
sustainability.
front of me though, so if you could pass me that, I can look at it.
So,
Sorry.
there's more, so the envelope contributes to the performance of the system, of the mechanical system, right? So we're building a very robust envelope. So we believe that more than just the design of the mechanical system is eligible for the IRA tax credit. But,
Yeah, 12 million is the total fee, so I would assume that it'll be, parts of that will be eligible for it. To Holly's point, you know, so it's the envelope, it's the mechanical systems, it's, you know. And again, it's that range between 6 and 40, so we won't know exactly what
Can
we're
we go
getting.
back to Mr. Cotton's question though, about like
That-
what the
that is kind of the question, is
what the
6 and
criteria
40, what
is
what's the
for
difference?
meeting
Why?
the 40?
What do we need to do? Yeah.
so there are a lot of different factors that go into the total percentage of the credit, and they, some of the factors are the amount of steel that's produced in the US. Gosh, what are some of the other criteria?
Yeah, so it's, you know, they have to have,
Apprenticeship program.
apprenticeship programs and then prevailing wage on the job. So there are a number of things that will trigger, you know, the amount of credit that you get.
So it's about who you hire and where they source their
whole bunch of
materials.
Correct.
Yes.
Yeah.
Thank you.
So some of that we
But-
don't know yet, and we can't, so that's why we can't say
Yeah.
where the
Okay.
credit's gonna fall. But there, our sustainability person in-house has been working with Jack and some tax attorneys to start talking about these credits. So the conversation has begun, but there are a lot of steps to take to kind of determine where we're gonna fall.
Mr. Brewster?
Yeah, we can check here with Keith from Harvey Construction, but I don't believe that this is going to be a wage-rated project. So that credit's going out the window right away.
Not necessarily. So one of the things we discussed early on here is that there's a potential that this system, if it needs to have those wage rate requirements associated with it, we would do that work under a contract that would be specific to that system.
But won't that then require a more costly contractor? Because if you
Potentially.
hire a contractor that's paying Davis-Bacon wages or is member of a union, then their rates will literally be double labor-wise of what it will be for an open shop contractor from New Hampshire, like Denron Hall or somebody of that magnitude. It's a big company that could handle a project of this magnitude. But their wage rates are gonna be half what Davis-Bacon rates.
We have found that not to be true. We actually have a Davis-Bacon wage-rated project going right now, and we surveyed our subcontractor base, and they are paying at or above Davis-Bacon rates. So that is not the case in New Hampshire at this current time.
Okay,
Can I also add
things
to
have
that?
changed.
Can I also
I
add?
worked for a union company and they were literally double.
This is going back to Mr. Cotton's question. So how I understand it, Mr. Cotton, we won't know exactly if we're gonna get 6% or 40%. However, for the geothermal, because how the Sustainability Committee discussed this is that there are, with geothermal, and correct me if I'm wrong, the product pieces are American-made. So we're gonna be able to shoot for that higher 40% because we're going to be able to meet or maybe almost meet that domestic product versus the PV, which we cannot meet fully the needs of the domestic product just because we don't produce those. So with the PV, we're less likely to meet that 40%. What that will be, I don't know, but we have a better shot at meeting that 40% with the project for geothermal.
And even
But
if you
at
look at the 6%,
6%,
right.
it's still the cheapest
Mm-hmm.
option, which is good.
Yeah,
Can you
exactly.
just explain the annual energy cost, this is not what we're paying, we would be paying with the new building, or?
Yeah, so that's what you would be paying with the new building. And we have at the bottom there the existing RMS that would be kind of averaged out over the last 3 years what the utility bills were for the existing middle school. So it basically lines up with what the geothermal would be.
Does this include using solar?
No, that is purely without solar. So it-
But remember that your existing school doesn't meet code right now, right, for ventilation, it
Yeah.
doesn't have cooling, right? So this will all be included in the new building, so we always warn our clients, like, you think you're gonna be paying less for your new building, but you're actually probably gonna pay more in most respects, because you'll actually have ventilation in your building, you'll have cooling, you'll have systems that work.
Yep.
So that's why it's not like a lot lower.
So who would we be, I'm trying to understand who
Yes.
would we be paying it to? Like, who's sending us this bill? Is it just our
Would be-
electric bill
yes.
at this point? So
Correct.
it's just electric?
Correct.
So if we're zero, if we're able to go more solar, then we can get rid of that bill?
Exactly.
Okay, thank you.
Can I?
She had her hand up and then Mr. Richards.
Hi, I'm wondering if in the record, we can have an asterisk indicating that the annual energy costs don't include photovoltaic net zero.
Sure.
Mr. Richards.
The blended electric rate that you have here of 23.57 cents, that's what you used for projecting the costs of the 376,000?
we started with the 23 cents and then we did a 2% increase per year.
So just for sake of comparison, Mr. Dunn? The 21 to 24 rate, was that 23.57 cents, or what was the cost for those?
It's a little lower than that today, but that's
Okay.
escalating out into the future.
But,
So right now, we're about 18 to 21 cents, all in.
Eversource is increasing every.
so it's 18 to 21, so we're really, that 375 doesn't quite compare to, I mean, because you're using this past year's rates versus future year's rates, correct?
Right, but if we think that future energy electric rates are gonna be lower, then we could look at that, but.
I think
don't
his
think
point
that.
was
I
that
think that
this
is-
rate isn't escalated to where we would start paying
This
this
is,
bill.
this is 375,200 at an 18-cent electric rate versus 376,000 at a
For the existing
23.5
school.
Yeah.
rate. So I think it's a little lowballing the existing rate when you're trying to compare apples to apples.
Good catch.
We should have a second asterisk.
A third one.
Well, and, yeah, I mean, if you're including, if we're including asterisks, I think the fact that Runlet runs about 85 degrees in June is also worthy of note.
How warm was it in there today?
It was warm.
Yeah.
Well, we weren't in school, right? So that's a positive.
Yeah.
Can I also make one more comment about incentives? That wasn't touched on, that EUI, less than 25. The total ground source will meet less than 25. The hybrid may not, because right now it's estimated to be at 26, so they'd have to do more work to get it below there. And if it's the third option, we would not be able to meet that incentive.
So that means no utility company rebates.
Right.
So that third option, you won't get any rebates from.
And it's not guaranteed with the second option.
It's not, at this point, it's not going to meet that
The
second
second
option.
option, okay.
More work would have to be done to the school in order to meet both.
Thank you. You wanna, any questions more questions on this slide, or should we go into slide 2?
Before we do, I just want to add, like, we assume occupancy schedules, so we do assume a typical school year. And then during the summertime, we assume that classrooms are roughly a third occupied. There's some use of the gym, the auditorium, but it is something which affects your utility bills, is how much you use the building. So, yes.
just triggered another question. So if there are no students and no activity in a building that's sealed, how much energy is used when no one is in there because you have to, and you can't, do you just shut it off and leave the windows open? I mean, what happens in the summer when you have a tight building like that? Do you have to have a minimum amount of energy that you're burning even though no one's in there?
Most of the time, it would set back to some temperature,
Okay.
and the systems would run just to maintain that temperature. So it might run for an hour or so a day, or obviously it's very weather dependent on that. But then one other thing would just be, obviously the systems would be designed so, you know, your offices would probably be separate from classrooms. So if your administration's in there, you're not running the entire building, just where the occupancy is.
It'll be zoned, and there'll be occupancy sensors that will detect if someone's in a room and run the ventilation accordingly, but it should shut itself down if nobody's in the building, you know.
What's the heat source here as far as, I know we're using groundwater for the water, but what's the heat source? Is it just natural gas?
So we would use heat pumps for it with the,
All electric?
yeah, it'd be all electric. And we would use,
So we can offset that with the photo array PV system on the roof and or ground canopies, if you said. So that we could become net zero by producing enough electricity to run everything.
that's correct.
And then in the months that we're hottest and not running anything, we can sell that back and then get credits from our electrical provider.
Yep.
Is that Eversource?
Depending on.
Unitil.
Unitil.
Mr. Adams?
So the annual energy cost, that's based on electric heat as opposed to, I mean, are you using the ground source in part, or is it?
So with the first option, it is all ground source. So with
Okay.
that system, it's a closed system, so we would basically just a bunch of pipes in the ground.
Right, so you're using the ground source for your heat as well. You're trying to capture the transfer from the water in the ground, as opposed to using electric. Because it would surprise me that even with the disparity in the electric rates being 21 versus 23, that if that was fully electric, I'd be shocked that the electric rates versus the gas would be approximately the same. I don't think anyone who has an electric house right now has a sense that it's a similar cost.
One good thing with the heat pumps, right, like if your electric resistance is basically 100% efficient.
Correct.
With the heat pumps, you're 200-300% efficient.
Correct, yeah,
So that's
so I
the
mean,
main,
it's better.
yeah.
In this will be obviously, if you do the full ground source, that's a very large system. What type of, I mean, do you have other systems of this caliber that have been installed for years, and we have some sense of the operating reliability on them? I mean, I know of some other systems that are more local that haven't quite had the success rate that they've looked for, because they started out fine, but that as the years went by, they have not had the same level of reliability. I know some of that has to do with water quality, it has to do with the underground aquifers and a whole bunch of different things. So depending upon what ends up here, my house used to be in East Concord, I had a well. The water quality is not fantastic in the ground, so that's gonna be going through the pumps. And, you know, I don't know how much the HVAC replacement cost is lowest for the ground source, but if you've got a system where there's a lot of, if you're having to replace pumps, you know, I'm assuming you're gonna have quite a few pumps, because you've got quite a few wells, even the bigger ones. The cost to replace those, and or if we have problems with the wells, I don't know how much redundancy there is in the number of wells, and whether it can operate at, you know, some portion of that capacity and still give us the full ability to deal with the temperature deltas that we have.
So with the system we're looking at, it'd be a closed system. So versus like your
open
wells are
system,
open.
yeah.
So we would not be circulating groundwater
Okay.
through it. It would all be, you know, most likely either water or a glycol solution.
mix, yeah.
And it would be treated probably with inhibitors to make sure it maintains water quality.
Mm-hmm.
Plus most of the geothermal piping will be basically plastic.
Yeah.
The HDPE, which is but I think much more
The fused
resilient.
together style?
Yeah.
Yep.
Yep. So we wouldn't be exposing like the pumps, the heat exchangers to the groundwater. I know when you do the open systems, that's when you do have your issues.
Correct.
And you are replacing pumps every 5-10 years.
Yeah, okay.
We have, I know right now, like quite a few projects in the around 140, 150 bores going down in Massachusetts. One started up a couple years ago, one's in construction now.
Yeah.
So,
So can we get some information on just the reliability of the one that's been, I guess, up the longest? Because how many wells did this one have?
initial estimate, we had 170.
Yeah, so this would be even larger.
Yep.
Yes.
Did your calculations include glycol in the loop, or is it just straight water?
Initially, we're going with, I think, 25% glycol, but that's something as the design evolves, we would check.
Okay, and those numbers on the previous slide reflected that?
Yeah.
Thank you.
Glycol doesn't transfer heat as well as water either.
Right,
why
that's why I
That's
asked.
the reason for the question, yeah.
So are there any questions, or I'll go with this slide?
Yeah, go
Okay.
ahead, go ahead.
So with this slide, it summarizes the findings from our life cycle cost analysis. We start on the left with the ground source heat pump. In the middle, it's the hybrid option. And then the right is the air-to-water heat pump with an electric boiler. The leftmost bar is the capital cost for the HVAC systems. That's the construction cost. The green one next to it is the life cycle energy cost. The one next to that is the present value life cycle cost. So that includes your first cost, energy cost, maintenance cost, and replacement costs. And that is in present dollars. Then the small one is the annual life cycle cost. Basically takes the total cost and then makes it as if you're paying every year.
Over how many years? 40?
40 years. And this is not accounting for any tax credits or utility rebates, or PV as well. Are there?
Go to the next
Yeah.
slide.
And this shows the present value life cycle cost for the 3 different system options with the effect of the different tax credits and the utility incentive. So we start again, you can see how as you go from left to right, even in the bars, the geothermal options both drop out as you start to add in the tax credits.
So we're hoping for the light blue.
I think so.
Yeah, just
But even
Summarizing.
But
light
even
blue
the
and
is
green.
better.
so what I'm taking away from this
Is there another?
I believe that was it for the life cycle costs. Are there any questions?
So, is it fair to say that, regardless of any rebates or incentives, the, life cycle cost of the ground source heat pumps is cheaper in all circumstances? Is that?
Yes.
looks like, yeah.
Woo-hoo.
I mean, typically it has like
right?
higher first cost, but it pays itself off.
Is
it
it
easy?
Yeah, but how soon does it pay itself off? Because if it's 20 years or more, then the high probability that all of this is going to be defunct, because as we see technology growing today, just as we saw in the electricity bills, they changed all the lights to LED and they use 1/10 of the power of incandescence. And so the electric costs have gone way down for lighting, plus it reduces your heat costs because you don't have all of that. So what's gonna happen to the HVAC side of this in 10 years, 20 years? So we're putting in a 40-year system where the likelihood is in 10 or 15 or 20 years, we're gonna wanna replace it anyway because technology has come to the point where it's never gonna pay itself back?
Well, Rick, my crystal ball is out in the shop, right?
Well, I mean, it just, I don't know about you, but I don't know that I got 40 years left in me, so, a life cycle cost of 40 years doesn't mean much to me.
And it's 40 years.
20 years,
is-
yeah.
Because that's how long this system is estimated to last, is that the?
40, well, no, 40 years is what we typically do, especially when we do more like federal projects. It's one of their requirements is a 40-year life cycle cost. So that's one of the reasons we ran that way. Most of the HVAC equipment will be replaced by 40 years. The geothermal, the piping itself will be lasting longer than that. Yes.
So on the number that you gave for like the HVAC replacement cost, that's not a yearly cost though? That's what you're thinking is gonna happen? Is that a cost that's been annualized, or is that a cost that is gonna happen in year 25, I think is what you said it was figured on, correct?
So yeah, we assumed 25 for the geothermal. That includes your geothermal heat pumps and the pumps.
But you
that's
annualize the
but
cost.
is that an annualized cost, or is that a one-time
It's
cost?
the way we modeled the life cycle cost was a one-time cost.
Okay.
But we did escalate it starting with when the life cycle analysis starts, we escalated the cost of that.
What the cost
throughout.
would be, so that the 1.2 or 1.8 million, whatever, is based on kind of future dollars because it's been escalated.
Yes.
But it's a one-time fee. On the previous slide where you had the small blue, that's taking that cost along with like the annual maintenance costs times 40 times the annual maintenance cost adjusted, plus that cost at 25. So that kind of you're replacing all the equipment one time at year 25-ish.
Yes. And I mean, really, you won't replace everything in 1 year. It'll be over
No, yeah,
years.
as stuff fails, you replace it. Some could be 10 years, could be 15, could be 20, could be 25 or 30, so.
Yep.
But that you're giving your best guess saying that in year 25, we're gonna replace it all, so that's the number that's plugged into the equation.
Yes.
Okay. Great. Do folks want to discuss this now about what they're thinking, or hear about solar before we go, and then come back?
I'd rather hear about solar.
Yeah, let's hear about solar. and
All
then
right,
talk.
let's hear about solar. So who's doing solar?
Surprise, Holly, you're doing it.
Well, I think what we priced is enough PV to get to net zero. And some of that's on the roof, and some of that was assumed as parking canopies. Or it could also be ground mounted, but then you would need to clear more trees throughout area to put PV panels on the ground. The PV panels that are canopy mounted are a lot more costly than the roof mounted PV, but as we mentioned, we can't get to net zero just on the roof of the building. So we need about twice the footprint of the building to get to net zero. So we did, we
Does
did
the
a sketch locating.
$76,000, sorry to interrupt, include using solar on the roof?
No.
I'm sorry,
No.
I didn't understand.
No.
that.
The first question.
No,
Yeah.
the answer's no.
Okay.
The answer's no.
It was the dollars when they
cost.
were showing us the grid
First one.
across, and it was like, oh, here's, it's gonna cost $376.
360
Right,
annually
yeah.
does not include any.
Not
It does
including
not
PV.
include PV, so.
Okay.
Theoretically.
So do you have the
It'd be
number
zero.
of what, broken down, like what we would save on that estimated annual cost if we had just roof PV?
We don't know
Is
how
it
much
fair
we
to
can
say it would be
maximize.
half the
I assume.
energy cost, or it's hard to?
I don't say, I mean, I think it probably would be about half, because we need probably double the, the roof area, so.
What does the canopy stuff look like? How do
You can
they
buy
mount them?
you can buy like pre-manufactured kind of all-in-one canopies with PV on top of it. You've probably seen it over like some of the parking areas. It's got like a little bit of a slope to it.
Usually
So it can
in
drain.
the
It's got lighting
lower
underneath
half or the
it.
out west, Arizona and stuff, they have that sunshades for the car and gives you PV.
Right.
And here it'd be for snow. You would have to clear.
Oyster River has
Right,
it.
Oyster River has it over their bus parking
Yeah,
area.
yeah.
Then you're saving money on
I don't
snow
think I've
removal
seen it.
later.
This is what Oyster River.
So, just a question,
Yeah.
Okay.
Is this gonna
Sure,
be
it's
on
just
top
like a
of parking areas?
garage.
Or,
It could be on the
Yeah.
parking area, to clear more trees.
I'm conscious of clearing more trees.
Certainly, makes
So it would
sense.
be,
We
but
have
Good idea.
calculated,
I like it.
we can provide all of the solar you need over the parking areas. We would not need to clear additional trees to put ground mounted, PV,
Okay.
so.
We did have somebody with expertise in this matter at the Q&A had encouraged us to pursue a more cost-effective measure. Do you remember what she was talking about? Is it because the ground-mounted are cheaper than the canopy?
That was it. She said the
Yeah.
kilowatt, the cost per kilowatt per structure of canopy mounted array is a higher return on that. So it's not that it's not efficient and it's not getting you free energy from the sun. It's just your payback is longer because
you
you're
have to
paying
invest more.
you're paying more money to put the structure in to hold the PV panels than you are to put it on the roof.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
A roof application is very simple.
and do we know what the payback is on canopy?
Don't think we have that info, but we can get it for you.
We can run that.
The difference between the roof mounted and canopy mounted, roughly order of magnitude, how much more would that be?
It was, we have that number.
It's
I think
actually,
that's in the
It's on the
Jack
spreadsheet.
handed out sheets.
It's 2 to almost 3 times, I think, the roof mounted PV. It's a pretty substantial premium
But all
based
of
on
that,
what we're
right?
estimating now.
It's
And
AB.
we're gonna explore options for more cost-effective PV canopy as we, move forward. So, if we can find some prefabricated PV canopies, that might be more cost-effective.
Thank you.
They also would be eligible for the tax credit if the steel is, manufactured here in the US, so you could potentially get tax credits for that.
But I think that the PV is not a decision too that you need to make like at this moment. That's a decision that could be made a little further down the line. So I think there's time to explore PV if it's something you want to explore.
I think you can't deny the cost-effective, like, the payback is.
More than double.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's almost 3 times.
Yeah.
Nicole?
Would,
4 million versus 1.8.
Would the PV on the ground be considered increasing the impervious area? Whereas if you put it over the parking, you would not have to increase your stormwater treatment?
Potentially,
That's a great question.
yeah.
Did you ask about whether they were building mounted or canopy mounted? What was the question? I'm sorry, I missed it, because we're actually installing a huge
My
array.
question?
Yes.
It was if you install the PV on the ground, does that increase the impervious area and the stormwater versus putting
It
it
does.
on top of the parking, which then is all the same impervious?
It does not. Actually, we are doing this, the largest array, well, at the time it was, and someone's beat us since then, but over in Rockingham County, we're actually installing a 10 gigawatt. It's enormous. Don't quote me on that size, but anyway, it's large. And it's actually put in the field, and that was one of the requirements of the state review of the DES, Environmental Services, specifically about groundwater treatment and stormwater treatment. The PV array is actually not considered any impact relative to drainage and its stormwater management, because they designed the ground underneath the array to manage that and keep it contained within the area that it would have been infiltrating anyway. So it's not impervious area, even though it's this giant thing sitting above you, because the water does actually get down to the ground that's below it. It's open and accessible, and it evaporates, and it does all the things that ground does that's not pavement. So it doesn't have the same impact.
Okay. But that does sound like there's additional costs for the site work underneath it?
Not when it's on parking, so, because you're already doing all the drainage associated with parking. So you're,
She's asking if
I'm
it
saying
wasn't
not
parking.
on parking. No, on the parking.
Yes.
I'm totally on the same page. It would be one amount
Yeah.
of impervious. I'm asking if you have it like in the,
we had it in a field, for
Grass,
instance, yeah, so that install price for that array, it was all in there, like,
it's all,
Foundation.
it's all
Yeah,
included.
they're
The
installed on
structure, the
foundation.
drainage, the association of all that was all part of that calculation, and there was no impervious discredit for for the panels.
Impervious just.
Thank you.
I think we can run some analysis too on, you know, how many trees we would have to clear to put it on the ground versus, you know, and get those numbers for you. I think it'd be a good study.
More trees, more trees.
Jay and then Mr. Richard.
Yeah, that was
Richard.
one of the questions. If we're, you know, again, rough numbers here, if we have half of our capacity on a 200,000 square foot roof, give or take.
Yeah.
If we find another 200,000 square feet on the site, that
Well,
would,
that's divided by 3, because it's a 3-story building, so the footprint is a third.
okay. So if we found that.
Roughly.
Yeah, good point. So if we found what we needed for ground-mounted solar to augment the roof-mounted solar that was not canopy-based, which would reduce the cost, you know, is there somewhere on the site, or even, I don't know what as
About
far as
2 acres.
regulations, but off-site for that additional solar?
So 2.5 acres.
Yeah. If it was
Not
200, it
that
would
big.
be,
I mean, really, in the overall scheme of things, 2 acres is not a large parcel. A part of land, especially if you took it as a strip, you'd barely notice there was a difference.
I have a question. How ridiculous is this idea?
Which one?
What?
I was sitting around a bunch of like professionals and I'm like, here's something. Because we're so close to Broken Ground and Millbrook is still a fairly young school, would it be maybe cost effective to include, this is like just right off the top of my head, so don't think I'm weird, to include photovoltaic for the younger schools, and maybe we don't go like full net zero on one school, but we cut the electricity costs of both in half. And that way you're not paying for canopy, you're really just paying for roof mounted on Millbrook and Broken Ground. I don't know when, if in our development plan we plan on replacing Broken Ground, but Millbrook is only a 12-year-old school. I don't foresee us needing to renovate that space for another 20 years theoretically. So would that be a way to get us to saving as much money as we want, even though it wouldn't make everything net zero, but we'd still be cutting the budget costs?
You wouldn't get the credit on this school.
Didn't get the credit.
It's a good idea, though.
Oh, thank you. I mean, since we're there, we might as well explore it.
roof to go, feed it back to the middle school.
So to
Well, I
add,
mean, yeah, could you feed it back to the middle
You
school?
So
also
to-
wanna look at what the age of the roof is before you put the panels up there.
Correct. I just put solar on my house,
If
and
they're a
it's the
20-year
best thing we ever
roof
did.
and it's halfway through, you may wanna consider replacing it before putting up the hundreds of thousands of dollars worth of
Right.
photovoltaic.
and the existing structures aren't necessarily designed to hold the
True.
additional weight of
That's
the
true.
panels, so
That's true. This is why we
We're-
have experts at the table.
That was a good question.
great idea.
Yeah, I liked it.
Mr. Richards, you had a
So
Thanks for
I
making
was,
me feel
I
better,
was,
guys.
I was thinking kind of along the same lines. How far away does it have, can we be with a panel? Because I'm just looking at, as we look at all of the peripheral structures, I would want a solar panel on every roof. If there's a roof over the stands along one of the fields, I'd want the panels up there. And if there was a roof over the maintenance shed that is going to be put in somewhere, I'd want them up there. How far away, like, can you have multiple locations? I know how close would that ground thing or another roof facility be?
Because aren't you just like pumping it right back into the grid? It really is just about the amount of generation that you create. It's not, you're not sending
Well, there's some
electricity
loss
right
made.
to the building, you
There
know?
may be some electrical loss for long.
And there's conduit
runs.
that you're gonna run from wherever you put it
Yeah.
back to the building, or, you know, so that gets expensive, but
Well, I'm just
certainly-
wondering if this is another opportunity to maximize our lower cost roof type of an approach.
Sure.
And I don't know if it's true or not, but I was just wondering if that's a possibility.
Sure, and they're all good things to look at, and I think we could study them. Like Holly said, I don't think we need the decision on solar tonight. And you could even put it into the add alternate category where we bid out the job and we're in good shape. We decide we can afford some or all of it at that point. But we can study different options for you. You know, a canopy next to the stands, next to where the fields are, great idea. You know, there's certainly places we can put it.
Does anyone ever, we have this square footage of the roof. Does anyone ever cantilever panels farther beyond the edge of the roof And is that a theoretical, or is that gonna be just as expensive as, probably gonna be just as expensive as putting a parking lot along Gray? And now that I think about it, it's steel and steel.
I mean, technology's always changing. I mean, by the time we're in construction, there might be something interesting out there that we can look at, you know. There's ways you can design facades with it built in, there's, you know, you can have it in the glass in your windows. So there's lots of different technologies out there.
Thank you for indulging me.
I think it would be helpful to get the payback costs, Jack, if you know, if we're thinking we still have $188,000 energy bill,
Yep.
roughly, after the rooftop solar.
We'll work to do that. I think the other important thing to note as we look through these tax credits, it will be likely beneficial for you to take advantage of adding the PV and if you go with the all ground source heat pump. Because what I believe the number is a 55% domestic content. You'll never get a 55% domestic content out of PV. It's all
Yes,
overseas.
all.
So if you try to make that separate and you get into these tax credits, which I think in that fees, that life cycle cost and all, they put in the PV stuff, or in the sustainability committee, they talked about that. You'd want to take advantage of the tax credits and do the PV at that time.
Yeah.
So the whole project meets that 55%
Yeah.
domestic content.
So the other component, and there is an awful lot of complexity to this. They just released the rules in November. We are working with our auditors, Markham, have a whole tax division who has helped being able to help Gary and myself start to put this together. It is very complex. He has put a chart together of 6%, 30%, 40%, and what each of those requirements are. I was looking for it on my phone. It's just a lot harder on that than it is on the PC. But we'll be able to provide you that. But we're trying to get down the road to put this a little bit in layman's terms. But it is very complex. But the big risk, big reward with it, because you look at almost a $7 million reduction, going from 18 to 10.2 million if you choose the ground source heat pump.
Would the PV be eligible if it was wrapped in the same project for the same tax credit as
Because it's
well?
gonna be looked at, what's the domestic content of that whole piece?
Okay,
Yes.
and we think if we did them together, we could get it at the 55%.
We would. The only way we'd meet that minimum threshold is with the
So
ground
that,
source heat pump
that
project.
$4 million cost could go down between 6 and 40%.
Sure.
Big total, big range there.
Yep.
Okay, well,
So
that's,
we'll work on that. And that's part of, I'll elaborate a little bit more since you're on the sustainability piece, as you see, as you highlighted, Pam. The front sheet that we handed out is blank, and then the one behind it was what I interpreted the recommendations to be. So you do see on that, if you look at the second page with the bunch of yes and no's, what I interpreted it, and I'll let Liz elaborate more, that they did not take the 1.8 million in savings for roof mounted, but they're saying for now, take the $4 million reduction in the ground canopy. Because a lot of that discussion had to do with the tax credits, one. Two, we could see what bids come in and see where to go with it. But the other pieces, as Tina mentioned, does the technology get better? Right now, they're assuming 50% roof, 50% canopy. Say in 2 years, 2.5 years, when you go to put this, because that's gonna be one of the final things you do, and now there's it's 80% of it. Then you may not need as big as a parking canopy. So that was the discussion, but Liz, I'll let you elaborate more if I'm speaking out of
Right, no, that is
wacky
correct.
Jackie, or if I'm on the
So our
level
initial
here.
recommendation is to, certainly for 100%, electricity needs met. But at first, to try to maximize what we can put on the roof. So if we're estimating 50% now, there was discussion that maybe it is 80% by the time we put it in, which would then change how much we would need to put on a canopy.
Okay, does that help? Along with the payback, we'll get that.
so, do we have a consensus around the Sustainability Committee's recommendation? Do people have amendments they would like to suggest, or?
It kind of feels like a no-brainer, right? It kind of feels like we're being pointed in a very clear direction as far as cost savings, the life of the system, the potential tax credits and rebates that we have access to. Like, am I on the right track? It kind of feels like we're all being pointed in one particular direction.
Is there anything we're not thinking of? Is there a risk that, and looking at some of our experts, because this is all very, very new to me, any risks or anything we should be considering that we're not, that's,
The ground source heat pump is also more sustainable,
okay,
so it's not only less expensive, but it's also
more sustainable.
Better for the environment.
Yes.
Sound was something that came up in the committee, so we wouldn't have the added sound in the neighborhood if we have it all underground.
Oh.
So noise pollutions.
Yeah, was discussed.
Well, I think we have.
Lisa has
Lisa had a comment.
My question is somewhat tangential to the decision around
Okay.
ground source heat pump. But given that the Inflation Reduction Act is looking to boost American manufacturing, is the construction industry anticipating supply issues on this type of equipment, given that we're trying to ramp things up?
I wouldn't say everybody's jumping on the ground source heat pump bandwagon. That's not where the industry's going. Portions of it, yes, but not that I have a crystal ball right now
But
either.
we have sufficient manufacturing in
Yes.
place to.
I mean, supply chain's always a concern, especially since the last 4 years, but no, that's not a hesitance in our mind.
Right on.
So barring objections, I think what we're saying is option one, all ground source heat pump with roof mounted solar, and waiting, getting a little more information and seeing where costs come in on canopy solar. Is that all right?
Is that a so moved? Do we-
We're
do we
not
have to?
we're not
I don't
really
think we're at
doing
that
it because
stage.
Okay, all right,
yeah.
all right.
So we'll say that's
Say that's that.
unless anyone wants to object.
No, and if I'm remembering, I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, I just had a question. The canopy photovoltaic will still pay for itself over time.
Yes.
Well, I think what we're asking to see is the numbers, but I think so, and
It's that sticker shock I'm all worried about.
And that's another key component with the Inflation Reduction Act. You have to outlay the money and then you get a direct payback at the end. So we are gonna have to foot the bill, but you get it at the end, so.
Well, I was
There's-
thinking less credit, which is also part of it,
Yeah.
but I was thinking of the cost to the district over the
Oh,
lifetime of
oh,
the-
absolutely.
Yeah.
of the
Yeah.
panels.
Yeah.
They will more than pay for
And-
themselves, even with the canopy.
And I did
Yeah.
visit with Jay yesterday, Oyster River. They're 2 years into their building, so I will be reaching out to them for the bills. Now, that is not the same, and talk about their system. We were up in the mechanical room, don't get too excited, Matt. And it is not the same system that's being spec'd here. They did have natural gas boilers up there. They did have heat pumps that were trained. They had 78 wells, but they were all under the parking canopy that Liz had showed the picture of. But I want to compare those to what you're doing and then what their experience has been. So,
Cool.
and different school, but still, the sustainability piece that they chose.
I mean, I guess the only thing that I'm a little bit worried about is of the three systems, the one that has the most unknowns is the ground source system. 'Cause you haven't drilled any wells, you don't even know what the capacity is. So you've made an assumption based upon, an expectation or a hope based on experience and what you do know of the area, but that if you go out and you drill the wells and you don't need 170, you need 230 because of the water that you find, or something that will, but the reverse could be true, you might only need 120, so I mean, it's a crapshoot. And you've done your best guess to try to estimate it, but like the air source version on the other one is far more of a known quantity because you don't have that variability, you know what that equipment is, but I mean, you've done your best to give us that estimate of this is what it's gonna cost is the 18 million, but there's a chance that it could be 19 million or 18 and a half once you get out there and you figure out what you need. More wells equals more pumps, equals more pipe, equals more site work, equals more everything, so that number's gonna go up. It could go down if you find that you have a great aquifer there, it could go down, but it can also go up. So there's a lot more variable where you're taking a greater risk at this point in time. I guess the only question would be is that, if we choose to go in that direction of the full ground source system, I guess my hope would be is that at some point down the road, we're gonna do the exploratory wells, and at that point, that's gonna determine how good a guess did we make in this? And if it goes in the wrong direction, we may decide that, gee, we wanna go hybrid, or we wanna go something else. So we don't wanna have a full design done, only to find out that, well, if we do it too far down the road, that
Correct.
the
We
water
should-
that's available.
We would recommend you do it now, right after this discussion. Once we're moving forward, we should do a test well.
To get the geotech out there immediately.
Or I'm guessing several, right? You're gonna not
Yeah, they're
wanna
gonna
just have
punch a
one
few
well, you're
holes.
gonna
They're
wanna
not
do
gonna
some
just
sort of a
punch
grid,
one.
so you get some sense as to how it is across a larger area, because you're gonna need 170 wells, that's
It's
That's a
slightly
big
different
area.
than the geotechnical, because we've done borings already, but this would be separate. This would be a test well to,
Correct.
to judge,
Okay.
what it's gonna be
And
like
how
for the
many do you
geothermal.
do, and how close do the wells need to be?
So we'll have our consultant recommend what you should do, but we recommend that you do it soon,
Yeah.
not wait.
Yeah,
And that well,
Monday's good.
that test well then gets incorporated into the final system. So
Rick
that
knows where
test
rig
well
Yeah. Rick's gonna bring the shovel.
Rick's gonna be out there with spray paint here.
Yeah, I'm more than happy to.
I have a question for fellow board members. If I remember correctly, and I don't know if any of us got emails, my recollection from my notes, public sentiment was very much where we're leaning as well, right? So we're all aligned. I don't think I heard anyone against this. I think this was.
I think this is an
More
area
votes.
where the people who are concerned about
Yep.
the cost of the school and the energy efficiency actually meet,
Yeah.
so that's good.
Well, I think that's
Yes.
why we need to have better information.
Yes, but we need to do the
Yes.
test wells, we have them in our plan, but we didn't wanna pay for them if we decided
Not to do it.
not
Well,
to,
either way,
the option was out, so
You
I
have to
think.
know in order to make the decision.
Yeah.
You know, you need that information to make a decision.
Well, right now, we're
And-
putting in, we're going with, or we're saying we're leaning towards the heat pumps. Based on the budget costs, we're pretty much in the same place if we go with option 2. So we will have the money for either, and then hopefully savings down the line,
Yeah,
so.
yeah, you're right.
And to,
If we're able to pull off the geothermal.
So Keith, what time you wanna get together?
right, exactly. So, so to Mr. Adams' point, this is the time to do it. We're not gonna be too far down the road. We're only in SD.
Yeah.
There's design development that's going on over the next 6 months. We just did this on another project that we evaluated that. They couldn't afford the wells, so we're actually doing a boiler and chiller plant. So it's kind of a hybrid, so to speak, that we didn't investigate in this particular situation, but we're not gonna go down too far down the road to not be able to turn back, so to speak. So
Right.
we'll be able to make more educated and more informed decisions with some more information. That's outside our scope, so we'll have to do that together.
Okay,
And
that's
that,
fine.
that well that they dig will be reused within the 170.
Right,
That
yeah,
would be
no,
the
I
plan.
wouldn't expect that it would be wasted, it would be something that would be.
Unless it came back and said, it's no good, then kinda, then we're not using it.
You can
Then we
use
won't
it for
need
the
that well or any
irrigation
other.
system.
Alright,
I just have
Yeah.
one, and I know I'm
Repurpose
all
it.
about the feelings, but I just wanna check with you too. You feeling good with this choice? You think the students, teachers, like people, this is a choice that?
I mean, I think we're being good role models in terms of sustainability and the things, and, you know, when we talk about projects like this, I think this is a wonderful learning opportunity for our students, grade 6 to 8, to learn about these systems, how they benefit the environment, et cetera.
Cool, thank you so much.
okay, let's move on to the programming committee then.
Ooh, only took an hour.
Important stuff,
It
expensive
is,
stuff.
I know.
I learned a lot, man.
The night is
Every
young
time we
and
have
so are
this
we.
discussion, it reminds me that I replaced my furnace 20 years ago.
Scary, isn't it?
It really is.
You know what's coming your way.
Yeah.
Ms. Hastings?
Yeah, so you have the report or the recommendations from the programming committee that met last week, and it wasn't our largest attended event, but we were able to get through quite a few things and make some recommendations that should help save some money if you decide to go with them. So I broke it into, I don't know why I said architectural, it must have been on one of the papers that I was working from, and field space. Architectural being more the building itself, so would you be okay starting there?
Yep.
Okay. So when it came to the gymnasium, we want we thought that we would recommend keeping the 9,000 square foot gym for a couple of reasons. And those reasons included, it would be large enough to contain the entire school population. So if they wanted to have some sort of event where everyone was there, there would be room for them to do that. And it would be the only space in the new building, if you take all of the recommendations, that would be large enough to do that. It would have the 2 half courts for practices, so you could run 2 practices at one time, and a regular court size for a game. But it's not the 12,000 square foot that we had originally considered. That would have been more of like you'd see in a high school where you might do state championships and that kind of thing. So the 9,000 provides space large enough for middle school needs, but not large enough for high school needs, I guess you would say. And not small enough. If we went to the 6,000 square feet, which was the other option, that is smaller than what they currently have at the middle school. And I believe, Mr. Richard, you'll be able to help us with that. When you have all of the students in there, you have some students sitting on the floor?
Correct, yes, yep.
So
Very
this-
close.
Yeah. This would
Mr. Cotton
provide.
was there speaking this, he can attest to that.
Yeah, this would provide an opportunity for everyone to have a seat in bleachers. So if you were having a presentation to the whole school population, everyone would be able to be in there comfortably, and we would meet code, which sometimes I guess we get pretty close.
Is there an option in between 6,000 and 9,000 where we could get all of the students in and have enough bleacher space for them?
I think so you know that the current one is 7,800.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and
So we did talk about, I think the existing gym is a little bit over 9,000, the way it kind of is designed in the current plans. It's like 9,300 square feet. So what we did talk about with the program committee is maybe trying to like shrink it a little bit. So we might be able to eke out, 800 square feet or something and get it down to 8,500 square feet, still get 900 students. So, you would have a little less space kind of around the courts, but
My understanding on that was that we could do that, but the cost savings isn't going to be as beneficial. We're talking about a very small amount that we'd probably be able to save and still be able to get everyone in there comfortably, safely, and appropriately. So that was our recommendation on the gym. Are there any questions about that? Additional questions?
I do have a
Yes,
question.
Sarah.
You mentioning the eking out 800 square feet. I mean, we've said that the price tag is fairly shocking and it's something that we're concerned about. Like, from your professional opinions, does nickel and diming in that way, like, let's say we remove, 800 square feet from the gym here, and then we whittle down a couple of things here and just do those little fine tunings, do you think doing that and through the course of the project is beneficial cost-wise in the long run versus the trouble of going through doing that in the first place?
Yes, I'm sorry, go ahead. If you look at line 5 on the building program on the first page, we did recommend.
Line six,
sorry.
reduce building.
We do recommend that they reduce the overall footprint by 6,000 square feet. And so the 800 might come from that at a savings of about $2.5 million if we can do that throughout the whole school.
Well, the reason I asked, just to provide some context, is that, the recommendation is 9,000 square feet, and then the multi-purpose room at 5,000 square feet. What I'm saying is, in retrospect, as we're going through the project and we say, hey, found out we could drop 100 square feet, I'm just pulling out a round number, from the multi-purpose room, and it'll save us like $100,000. Like, should we be considering that as we go? Right? Like, or is it?
The answer is yes, and I
Okay.
think with this next round of design, I think we'll look to trim things everywhere we can to try to hit that 6,000 square foot number. I don't know if we can get it as low as that, but it would be our goal to try to tighten things up as much as possible.
Great, thank you very much, that answered my questions.
Next was the multi-purpose room.
it was being proposed at 5,000 square feet, and we recommend that you keep it at 5,000 square feet because of the sports that use those rooms. We're thinking mostly weightlifting and wrestling,
and
I'm sorry,
cheerleading.
yes, wrestling and cheerleading, and they need that space both in height and in what the cheerleaders needed in height, because they do a lot of acrobatic work and gymnastic work. And the wrestling, while they have mats, you know, if you've been to Broken Ground or any of the other schools, you can see them rolled up on the side and pushed to the side. Well, these have a hydraulic lift, so they're off the floor, but they also require some space as well. But it would provide them with everything that they need to be able to host practices, meets, and have people attend as well. And wouldn't compete with the gym for other sports that might be practicing indoors. So we did suggest that you hold on to that. There was no price change for that option. It was the auditorium where we had a lot of discussion and some different thoughts. And you'll see that we came up with a couple of solutions or recommendations that may save some money. A little bit of difference after our conversation the other night at the high school. We propose that you consider a 450-seat theater multi-purpose room versus an auditorium. And the reason that we suggest that is the 450 seats would allow, what was that, 200 more than what we had at the high school the other night? So it's a larger space to have performances, but those seats would not have to stay stagnant, stay there. We could push them back into the wall, similar to what they do at the Bank of New Hampshire stage, so that you would have that space for other performances that might be happening. If you had a composer come, if you had an activity where students were
Got you covered here.
there you
Yeah,
go, look at
check
that.
it out.
So these seats here would push back into the wall. So you'd be able to use that space for multiple things. Whereas if it's an auditorium, those
They all
seats
stay
don't
still.
move.
Right.
So this just gave us more flexibility, and it reduced the cost to do that. Questions on that?
Combine it with the multi-purpose room?
Well, we talked about that, and my understanding was that the difficulty in combining it with the multi-purpose room is that would be maybe if the wrestling team wanted to have a meet there, but you've also got a production going on, now we're still vying for space. And this gives us options where if there's not a performance going on, which we don't think will be the case, there's usually some kind of concert or performance happening in the schools, that this would probably be used for those purposes more often than not. But in the event that they weren't, you might be able to host a different kind of competition in this space.
But so it doesn't have a stage per se? It's
It would have a stage.
It would
That was
have a
one of the
stage.
recommendations.
Okay, so behind that curtain
Yes.
is the stage,
Yeah.
okay.
Well, actually, if you push the seats back, I think the floor goes down.
Front section of floor is actually removable, so it becomes a raked floor, like a
Oops.
stepped floor.
That's not confusing at all.
Sorry. It's so slow because the graphics are so intensive, but right here, yeah.
Yeah,
that's
that
where-
front section of floor actually is removable, so there are
Like a dance
steps,
floor at a
there's stepped
reception.
seating below that, so when you want to use it, it basically then creates a stage because you're stepping down and then you end up with an elevated stage where that yellow rectangle is.
Yeah.
And then if you want to use it as a flat floor space, you put that floor filler back in and it's a flat floor.
Oh, yeah, right here.
And then the seating on the left basically retracts. So it's very
It's
similar.
all right in here.
Yeah, so
So
it's
how
similar.
long does it take to put down the parquet?
Yeah.
Yeah.
You just push a button.
Really not bad.
As long as that button works.
Yeah, man.
We're good to go.
So all that flooring just comes out of the
So
floor?
it's like a
or-
pit filler. I don't
need
know
more
if
electricity
you've like ever seen,
rotate.
you know, in a theater they have like a pit filler that can go out so that the front area of the stage gets longer for
Oh, yeah, so the
performance.
orchestra pit gets covered.
Right,
Oh.
so it's got like little adjustable legs and stuff. I mean, I don't think you wanna be doing this like on a daily basis,
No.
cause it'll take some time to get it all, you know, flat and everything. But, and we could do this space without that too. You could essentially have just, you know, chairs in those front few rows as well. So we, you know, we can look into this as we progress through the design.
I'm just gonna press the question that Pam asked a little deeper. How many times a year would there actually be competition between, say, the wrestling team and a performance? So, you know, like if we're only asking the wrestlers to move their mats into the big gym a couple nights a year, and I'm just asking, so.
I can respond to that.
Yeah.
So there is a fall and a spring production for the PEG, the Performing Arts Group. And then cheerleading, and wrestling actually compete with each other in themselves. So they each have to share a space, and then you do have the 2 performances for spring and fall. So there is a good amount of competition
Okay,
for
thank
space.
And they have practices like 4
Right.
days a week for the plays.
Right.
Thank you.
But the multipurpose, the multipurpose room where they have the wrestling, there's also bleachers and stuff in there, correct? There's also tiered seating in there, in some fashion,
Well,
correct?
right now, there's what's called the MPR, the multipurpose room, and then the NAR, the new activity room, which has been there longer than I've been, 25 years, but still the new activity room. And so,
Not as new.
No. And so currently the NAR has seating similar that goes into the, you know, the wall, I guess.
Yep.
And then the current MPR multipurpose room is also our joint cafeteria. So I don't know if that answers the
So
question.
but the wrestling meets are held in the new room, correct? Where the seating is. So I guess what I was thinking is, you know, if you are able to keep the 2 spaces, but that if the room that has the fancy bleachers that can collapse and come out and seats 450, if you could have the wrestling tournaments in that space so that you don't have 2 rooms that have 2 sets of bleachers, bleachers are an expensive component. You might still create a multi-purpose room that it gives you the practice space for wrestling, cheerleading, even plays or whatever, you know, depending upon what it may need to be, but that if you don't need to have 2 sets of bleachers, you may not save the full cost, but you can save the cost of all that expensive seating and just have it in one room that's nicer and maybe has the movable floor and, you know, so that it's still gonna be, you'll need to work on the challenging aspects of the schedule in terms of you can't have a performance the same night you have a meet or a dress rehearsal, et cetera, but
There's an extra space to have something.
yeah, you can still have the practices, you can achieve a lot of that, but you can save the money and not have 2 sets of bleachers in those spaces. And this one arguably will be a nicer space than the multipurpose room would be anyways, so it'd be better to have the stuff in there.
Can I just get some, I guess, refresher on how much flexible space we currently have or I'm sorry, that's in the plan? So if we have this becomes a flexible space, and then there is a multi-purpose room.
Go
So-
back, pull up the overall floor
Yeah,
plan.
I'm-
Go,
I
yeah.
just can't
Yeah,
remember
It's at the
what-
beginning of the presentation.
Okay. Probably better off just kicking out. There we go. You want, right there?
Yeah.
Okay. Okay. It's just the graphic intensive. It's just
So it looks
Doing
like
magnificent.
there's a
Yeah.
multi-purpose space over that purple part.
That's the multipurpose room for
Okay.
athletics,
Right,
yep.
and it has a
Keep
small
going.
set of
Oh, right there.
bleachers.
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah.
Oh.
And then what we were talking about was replacing that 900 seat theater with the 450 multipurpose, so it would go in there.
Okay.
So it would still have like the music wing behind it to provide support for the stage, and all of the sort of, you know, services you need kind of back of house.
And then you also have the main street, so the cafeteria that's in the middle. We have lots of space for storage of those tables and chairs. So you can use that space as well, and that's 2 stories high.
It doesn't seem like, and maybe the spaces are bigger than what we currently have, but if I look at the number of spaces, it seems the same as what we currently have. Am I understanding that correctly?
This group was very like adamant about not reducing what you have now in this new building, trying to at least keep it the same number of spaces and the similar size.
So the multipurpose room now is the cafeteria, correct?
Correct.
Yes.
So the equivalent to that is that open area in the center.
Is
That's
the
the
Front Street.
cafeteria.
Yeah. We were thinking you could have some cheerleading practices in there where you're doing some flying.
So that's the multipurpose room, and the purple area is the new room
Okay.
equivalent, correct?
This one.
Although I don't know if the bleachers that are shown there, that look smaller to me than what might be in the new room right now.
It might be smaller, but it is what the athletics department said they would need for like hosting wrestling meets.
So the seating, that small amount of seating is adequate for the wrestling meets?
Yes.
So I think, does square footage matter at this point? Is that what we're asking? Because we did that quick math in the programming, saying the
Sure.
gym is 7,800 square feet, this one's 9,300. The room adjacent with the wall off for the cafeteria is 3,800 square feet. So you'd replace that with, say, the 5,000 square foot purple area. And then the NAR that has the barn doors for the stage, that is 5,000 square feet, if I remember right.
Yeah.
And you're replacing that with 7. So you're gonna compare 16,600 to 21,000 square feet. So it's
And
almost
you're
5,000 square feet
actually
more.
getting a little extra space
And
if
then-
you were to use this. We're not counting that as a multipurpose space necessarily for the athletics programs and the art programs. So you'd have the NAR over here, if you will. The multipurpose room here,
Theater.
but at least this would be smaller than here.
And then the next floor, you'd have your gym.
Then you'd have your gym still. So I think you're actually getting a little bit more space.
Well, and while I understand the individual spaces are bigger than what we currently have, I'm still looking at the number of spaces. And so that's great that the multipurpose room will be bigger, but it's still just going to
What
be.
you have the multipurpose room and
Yeah.
NAR
Yeah,
right now,
Yeah.
right? And what else?
and the cafeteria.
And the cafeteria.
And the gym.
And the gym.
Well, the
And
multipurpose room is part of the cafeteria though, right?
Yes,
So-
but
So-
yes and no, there's a wall that divides them,
Right.
so it could be used as a separate space.
You would still have those. You would still have, here would be the NAR.
Yeah,
Here would be
Multi-purpose theater.
multipurpose.
yeah,
Here would be, the gym is on
Oh, yeah.
another floor.
Yep.
There's the gym up there. And then what else did you say?
Cafeteria.
The
Cafeteria.
cafeteria, which you would have here.
That's an extra.
right, but I guess what,
Were you looking for more space?
well, that's what I'm wondering, is anything being removed? Because the auditorium that you're proposing gets removed.
We put the
Reduced, thank you.
Right.
Well, no, it says change. It
Change to a
change.
multipurpose.
To
Right.
multipurpose room.
Right.
Okay, but there was not another multipurpose room.
No, that would
beyond that.
really, a
Okay.
better name for that would be a multi-purpose theater.
Okay, gotcha. Okay.
I think that's what I termed it in
Because I
the,
could imagine there being like.
so right there.
Yes.
D.
Cells in there.
Yeah, and we discussed the need of the fly loft and the catwalk, probably not necessary for a middle school production, but we want to make sure that you would have enough height that you could fly, put the lights up and whatever you needed for that, and enough backstage space for them to be able to move around and prepare appropriately.
And that relates to my question, because currently the students who are using the NAR is wildly inadequate.
Right.
For their needs. Middle school is a really important time of life, and a lot of kids find community and belonging in the arts, and I think that's incredibly important, and I don't wanna have it be, shortchanged. And so I do think that the multi-purpose theater is a creative way to try to maximize the usefulness of that space, but I would ask or hope that it would include the ability to be fully darkened without light, outside light, as well as making sure that, the theater, the stage, or unsunken floor next to sunken seats, like would still have space, again, would have the ability for being set up for lights and sound, as well as having wing space and backstage space.
Yep.
Yep.
Understood.
Yeah.
Could
And what we sent to Harvey for pricing did include a catwalk and a gallery. So, there is a level of, sort of professional theater that is being accommodated in this design.
Is there a ability to do curtains? Because we heard that last night, that they wanted
do what?
curtains. Could they,
Well, it's hard to tell, cause this is like,
Stage.
there's some curtains there.
Yeah,
Yes.
those curtains
They're all
there
black,
at
so
the
it's dark.
sort of the stage. Yeah.
I'm just trying to get the clarity that Pam is going for. I'm not a theater person, I don't know what a fly loft or a catwalk is. Maybe I do, but are those the same, are we taking out the things that the theater folks were asking
Right.
for 2 nights ago?
Yeah.
Because they were pretty clear about wanting
We need like a
wings and-
grid, I think was the most
what I mean?
important part.
But
That's
they
the
wanted them at
lighting.
the high school.
Right.
Right.
Well, no, there was
No,
a
they were
conversation about the
talking
middle
about
school
it-
as well.
They did both. They were like, if you're not gonna give them to high school, you have to make sure that they're at the middle
Yes.
school is.
So the fly loft, they said, is not necessary for the middle
Okay.
school. But they did wanna have the lighting and sound
Yeah.
and,
Okay.
and the backstage space.
And this would provide for that.
Could you,
Which, that,
The backstage, yeah. Okay.
could you go through the costs of this? Because I'm trying to figure out, eliminate the 900 seat auditorium, but change to a multi-purpose room is 890. So I'm totally lost in what this proposed cost is.
So we'll start at number 2. Is that where you want to focus, or from the beginning?
I would like to start at 2D. Like, how does that compare
2D.
in cost to the 900 seat auditorium?
So the,
What are you looking at? Yeah.
We're looking at this.
I have what I-
The price cut, yeah.
The price.
so
I'm like,
if you have,
Elimination, what is?
if you turn to the second page on this, that I handed out, with the yes, nos, so 2D, which is what we added from the program committee recommendation, is, right now, if you eliminated that whole auditorium, it was $6 million, okay? But if you change it from a 900-seat auditorium to a 450-seat multi-purpose theater, you can reduce that $6 million by $894,000, because the $6 million's already embedded.
Okay, so it's cheaper to do a 450 seat theater
Yes.
than to do this multi-purpose room. Why is that?
no, it's a multi-purpose theater.
The theater.
Yes,
So it's
but,
Cheaper to do the 450 than the
She's talking
900.
about 2C and 2D.
So there's some cost.
so 2C would be cheaper
Yes.
than 2D, that's what I'm
So
trying to.
there's some cost in that movable seating, that
Okay.
comes with a, pretty good price tag. And then there's some cost in, I think, building that floor the way we needed to function in all those different versions. And we haven't really had a chance to design it completely yet, so Harvey's not exactly sure what to price at this point, so I think there's probably a little bit of contingency in their money on this too. So you might see a little more savings than that, but there's still some unknowns. So your direction to us could be to reduce it to the 450 and, study this option and see, how much savings we can get versus what the static seats are. Like, once we move into DD, we can do that kind of study for you.
So is, on this sheet, where it says remove auditorium and install, this says price reduction of at least 1.78 million, is that a typo?
No, so what happened was, because we didn't have 2D at the time, they said, take the reduction of 1.7, but leave the catwalk and fly loft in there to give them the buffer. So if you leave it in there, now you're down to 900,000. See what I'm saying? Okay, 1.7 million, take that reduction, but we didn't take the the fly loft and catwalk reduction.
Oh, yeah,
So
yeah, yeah.
when you net them out, that gave about 900,000 they thought might be where they would need to be in order to build the 450. Now
So-
we've made
so
it
it
its
was
own line.
3 and 4 on this sheet is an either or. 3 removes the catwalk and the fly loft. 4 is just that
Yeah.
on this sheet.
But if you look at this sheet.
Yeah, this sheet's different.
These two add up.
Yeah, that was one I did, we
Okay.
did write, those are from
Right.
the notes, the minutes from the meeting.
Yeah. I know.
If we didn't
notes and
have
one's
these
the
numbers.
spreadsheet,
Right,
Right.
right,
Jack did the spreadsheet later.
yeah.
Okay.
So does that make sense now?
I think so.
It was just to try to come up with a net number, give them a cushion.
Ms.
But-
Vaughn, then Ms. Richards, and Ms. Overton.
On Pam's question, are we reading it correctly that it would be cheaper to do the 600 person auditorium still?
6,000.
Yep.
No,
The-
600.
Yeah,
600
with the
feet.
stationary seat.
Right, but you lose the option of using it as a multipurpose room.
The fixed seats.
It's just an auditorium at that point that you can't fit the entire population of the school in. And you can't use it really for anything other than performances.
But we're gonna fit the entire population of the school in the gym.
That's the one place you could do
Yeah.
it, right?
I don't know that we need more than one place to do that.
Right, no, that's what we agreed with that.
Mr. Richards?
So these numbers may be a little bit flexible. I mean, this was done very quickly after the programming group meeting. When did we meet? Last week. So, you know, we quickly drew up this idea, sent it over to Harvey, and they did some very quick pricing. So I think that if this is something that you're interested in, I think we need to probably spend a little more time digging into the actual cost, because actually, I think you should be able to take the credit for the catwalk.
I did take it. So you can see that I am taking, in this one, what the committee recommended is $894,000 reduction and the $847,000 reduction.
So the total is about 1.7.
So if you go to the next page.
Yeah, but I think
$1.7
we'd like to
million
get to the 1.7 plus take out the
The
catwalk.
catwalk.
Which,
I mean, that's what the original proposal from the notes
Yeah.
suggests, which is that we're reducing 1.7 by
I mean,
moving to
is it just
450,
the
and
type
then
of
also-
seating, like?
I think so, and I think it just needs a little bit more design. So if you give us the direction that you would like to go to the 450 seat, right?
Multi-purpose.
We can do a study to see how expensive that retractable seating's gonna be. And then we could come back to you and say, look, it's actually, you take the 1.7 now, but we come back and we say, it's actually a $200,000 premium to go to this multi-purpose version of it. Do you wanna do that?
Yeah, well, right now it's a $1 million premium, so I think that's trying to understand.
Yes,
Yeah.
I agree. It needs a little more work, and I think we can do that in the next phase of design and bring it back to this group for feedback, and you can decide, you know, in the next couple of months, which way you wanna go with that space. Whether the flexibility is worth a little bit more money.
Right.
I just have one follow-up question. When the high school and other school district events are held at the Capitol Center, what's the typical attendance? Does anybody know?
Oh, I don't know, I was.
I can say I went to all the events this year. Depending on the show, I think the last one I saw was the band. No surprise, that's like the music choice that kids select the most. It was pretty full. I wouldn't say standing room only. I went actually with Principal Herbert from the high school, and there were very few spare seats there at the Capitol Center for that last show of the band concert. Some of the other ones, how many?
That's the all-district concert.
Yeah, 5 through 12.
So that's all of the schools and,
Yep.
yeah.
Yeah.
There is an element of community involvement that I really don't wanna lose by cooperating with CCA. Like, there's aspects of community schooling that kiddos really benefit from when you have active partners in the community. So I wonder if part of, like, this is a school board thing or a district thing, part of our due diligence, I think, would be to speak with CCA about, and I'm sure this is something that people have already done, but we should probably be engaged in more of a conversation about community entities and nonprofits being involved in the district for the benefit of students, and how can we do that in a way that means that we don't have to charge parents to go to those events. It's a bit off track from design, but not really, because we were lamenting having to move all of this equipment and stuff for sure, but there's also like a really important element of the kiddos performing at a legitimate you know, stage in the heart of their downtown. Like, those are important elements of a robust education that I don't want us to lose because we don't really wanna move equipment, which I get, it's a pain in the butt.
my takeaway from the other night, though, was that it was more than just the performance of the day, you know, when the day you perform, it's all of the rehearsals, all
Yeah,
of the
that's true, too,
practices
yeah.
that they wouldn't be able to practice there. They can't take over the CCA for however long it takes them to practice a production. So
Well, I think you're talking, the concerts, they go like the day of.
the day, concerts might be different,
Yeah,
right?
that's what I mean. It's like the performance aspect of, or just, I'm trying to be mindful of how the community engages with the district. And some of the ways that we can potentially alleviate costs is by engaging with aspects of the community that fulfill needs.
Mhm.
Which winds up being better for everybody in the long run. When you engage in more of a community-minded programming, you wind up with kiddos with higher proficiency rates.
So if I could, just a little more additional information as it relates to CCA. So right now in your general fund budget, you've spent $20,000 with CCA. In that contract, it includes 5 nights that are used for rental of the facility. 3,000 goes towards the management equipment, all that. And then the rest of the money is used for tickets for the elementary, so the Music in Our Schools month. That's when the schools are rotated over
that's
there.
when my kiddo got to go
Yep,
to the
that's
Jurassic
included in
Dance.
that 20 grand. My conversation with Sal Prizio, fantastic.
He's a great guy.
Yeah, absolutely. Met with him a couple times, especially on this new contract. One is, if you're interested in seeing Bank of New Hampshire Theater, they're more than willing to show it to make that similar multi-purpose theater thing. 2, I said we do not have any interest in competing with them.
Right.
So renting our facility. And 3, if we were looking more, would that be possible? And he said Monday, Tuesday, Wednesdays are good. But yeah, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday
Booked
would
out.
be very, very tough.
Yeah.
But they're more than willing to engage in the conversation, just so you know.
So to clarify that, right, in addition to what the parents or visitors or attendees pay, we pay as a
20
school
grand.
district another 20,000 just so you can be able to use it. And it includes all those things. That's crazy. So, but coming back around again to looking at these 3 options, if you change that around a little, because that gets a little confusing. Right now, we're saying a 600-seat auditorium with no catwalk and all that thing.
450.
4,050,000, 59,000. Well, no, I'm saying that's the 600.
That's, I see what you're saying,
I'm
yeah.
going to 600, because I'm going lowest cost to highest cost on this one. So that would be a 4,058,400, 4,059,000 rounding up and stuff for a 600-seat auditorium that doesn't have the up and down stage and that whole thing.
Flexibility.
If you go into the theater one, like the picture we saw, that's a $4,258,000 option. And if you go into the 900, that's a $5,151,000. So, you know, difference of about $250,000 from the lowest and about $1.1 million from the lowest to the highest.
I'd really like to hear Jay's thoughts on this, because this was with the students.
All right, I'm going to take a deep breath.
I know, I feel it, yeah.
I mean, one of the things I think about a lot is like, these are like historical decisions that we're making that are, you know, literally going to echo for a long time. When it comes down to the seat sizes, whether it's 900, 600, or 450, I just want this to be a reflection of not just what the community needs now or the next 5 years, or being thoughtful about, you know, 20 years down the road, 25 years down the road, because I just want to, and I know all you feel the same way, but I just want to get this right for the kids in our city. But again, it's not about just right now or the next 5 years or 10 years. It's about 25 years down the road, or 50, you know, a long time. And, you know, I from my experience this year, I just feel very confident this community, not just the middle school, needs some kind of space where we can have a large group opportunity, whether it's for our wonderful PEG program, if it's a guest speaker on a professional development day, if I need, you know, if I'm working with a Millbrook and Broken Ground principals and they need to evacuate to my school, where do I put them? Just those types of thoughtful things that, and I think, no matter what space you decide, and I know this is a huge, huge decision with a lot of resources involved, I just want us to be as thoughtful as possible, again, that this is going to be something that we know is going to serve our community well, not just in the short term and, 30 years down the road. And we don't know what this district's going to look like, how many kids we're going to have. But, again, that's why we're building it to a certain amount, maybe 900 kids, even though we only have close to 800 right now. And we have plans for expansion. But I know this community needs something. And I think it'll be a wonderful resource for the entire school community, no matter what size we do. But I just want to be thoughtful about that. And I think about, the wonderful recognition ceremony that we had last week. Superintendent Murphy and Pam were both there. And, I told my families, you can only bring 2 guests, my kids. I have 275 kids. Place was very busy. But those are hard things for a principal, because I'm telling a family that, whatever your family looks like, you can bring 2 people, but maybe grandma can't come, or things like that.
Or a sibling.
Yeah, or a sibling. Now, I recognize we're not going to make it, we have to be reasonable too. And, how we arrive at a number like 900, I think of my 800 kids, 100 staff members. So if we wanted to do that, I recognize that won't be frequent or those types of things. But I think when you have a space, whatever space we decide, that we just want to be really, really thoughtful about the number that it's going to accommodate just not the basic things we think we need right now, but also the growth. When I think of this music program, and again, I said I went to the Capitol Center, we have amazingly talented staff and kids, and I only see that program growing. And then when I think of, no matter what we decide, the wonderful work like our PEG program does, like when we have a facility, how many more kids are even going to be more interested when they have a state-of-the-art type facility? And I recognize we don't, but again, bottom line is that this is going to be like a community resource, and then what other opportunities might other people, again, I know we don't want to be competitive with downtown and other opportunities, but I think we have this type of space. I think we're going to be surprised by the opportunities that it might present, not just the middle school, but the entire K-12 program. I would envision, Katie and then future Kyle, if they need to do some kind of, performance or some kind of opportunity with a guest speaker where you would say, Jay, can I come? Of course you can use the space, because it's a community space. Yes, it'll be located at the middle school, but it's going to be this community resource. And I don't envy any of you, because this decision, again, isn't just about now. It's going to be, way down the road. And one of the first times I spoke to the school board, when I joined here, it's like, again, we want the people 20, 50, 20, 25, 30 years down the road to look back on it and say, something, these people got it right the best they could. What we don't want is to look back, 10 years, 20 years and be like, geez, I wish we had done this. And I've seen that in schools where they were a little short-sighted. I'm a Dover High graduate, so I can say this years ago, but like, when they built the brand new Dover Middle School, they quickly had to put on an addition within a couple of years because it wasn't sized right. I'm not saying we would ever do that, but it's just about being thoughtful. So thanks for listening.
So to piggyback on what Jay's saying, when I first started here in 1999, there were 1,200 middle schoolers. That's a big difference from what we have now. And we were at the point that each 8th grade cluster had to take a turn in the basement of the high school each quarter. So I would start quarter 1 at the basement of the high school, and then I would have to, at the end of the quarter, pack all my things and then move back to the middle school, where the next cluster would pack all their things, and I would move into their room, and they would move up to the high school, and that happened every quarter. And I know projections have been done on population and things, but I do think we need to look at the future and make sure that we are accommodating the potential to have 1,200 students. We had it once, there's no reason why we couldn't have that again, so.
before anybody says any more thoughtful things and stops me from leaving, I double booked tonight, so I had so I gotta run. But thank you for your sentiments, and I look forward to watching the video to find out what other amazing things you guys talk about.
Thanks,
Mr.
Kara.
Adams.
I mean, I agree that I think, you know, part of the benefit of the community of Concord is what we have available to us, you know, and I think that, you know, having a place like the Capitol Center or the Bank and Amherst Stage, I think that's a luxury that a lot of communities don't have. You go to some of the smaller towns and some of the other areas, they don't have that. So for them, it's very important to try to put stuff like this in the school system because it's not available and they're driving to Concord to use it, which is, you know, not like trying to bring something from the high school over to the Capitol Center. It's, you know, a 30-minute drive or something if you're in a smaller community. So, and I do think that by using those places, like you said, it's mutually beneficial. It benefits the Cap Center. It brings enlightenment to the public about that space and how beautiful it is. And you know, we should all be pretty thankful that it's available to us. There's a cost. It's $20,000 a year for 5 days, $4,000 a day, a night. If you use the 40-year analysis we were just talking about in our system, that's $800,000 to use it for the next 40 years in today's dollars. It's $6 million to build that room.
Yeah.
Jack, does the $5 or whatever the costs that parents are charged pay back that 20,000 rental?
No, it goes in the student activity.
Okay.
Yeah, the general fund doesn't see any.
Okay.
So I think the one thing that we heard at our questions and answers, that the one thing that members of the community seem to agree on, no matter where they were on any other issue, is that they did not think we needed a 900-seat auditorium. I'm more inclined to the 450, and that we try and figure out what's the best option in between multi-purpose and stage, or is it a multi-purpose that has a stage, but instead of really fancy seating, it has bleacher, you know, and I'm looking at the, you know, something that comes closer to the 1.7 million in savings is where I'm at, but I'm open to the seating if we save money at the end of the project.
No, I was just gonna say that well, I appreciate everything you guys said. There are a lot of taxpayers out there who are very worried, and we need to take that into account too. Yeah, maybe someday we'll need 1,200 seats. I hope that happens, but I think we need to be as conservative as we can from a taxpayer point of view. And I think that the program committee has done a good job of trying to balance that. So I very much appreciate your and their work. One question I had was, we haven't talked about the greenhouse yet. And I'm not sure you guys want it or not. I mean, it's only $300,000.
We took it off because it was on the roof. It wasn't a greenhouse on the grounds of the school, it was a greenhouse on the roof. So we said that might be something you come back and add later on the grounds of the school at a different time.
Okay.
Okay.
We thought that would be an area where we could cut back a little bit.
I was just gonna say, I would be in favor of, I like the greenhouse idea, but I don't think it needs to be on the roof either. I think we have room on the ground, and that's more solar panel space. And I'm gonna be.
He's a man who sticks to his guns.
Well, I'm gonna be.
I thought you had to let the light in to feed the.
Yeah.
But I'm gonna be frugal, like, you know,
Yeah, yeah.
John said, and then to go back, I agree on the 450. And the question is if you make it that sort of retractable, or at that point, do you still need the 5,000 square foot multi-purpose room?
That
or
might
could
be
you
where
do
they
a
would come up
3,000
and,
square
they
foot
might come back and
multi-purpose?
say, yeah, that's where we'll get some of our 6,000 that we've recommended they try to cut.
I want you to look at it, that's all, and that's all I have, but hey, maximize that roof.
Yeah, I've been to Bank of New Hampshire stage for multiple kinds of events where they've had all of the seating out and where they haven't, and it's such a valuable space. Like, it really is an awesome, it's a great resource for the way that the community uses it right now. Like, I've been to dance parties where all the chairs are pushed back in, there's tons of space, and then, watch jazz guitarists where it's like a more intimate sort of environment. I feel like that's going to be, like, we need versatility in what our spaces are available to do. And I feel like having a space that allows us to move seating back and be more flexible with the way that we use spaces is going to be the most cost-effective way. Like, if you can remain nimble and move things around, then you wind up being better off in the long run.
So
And
does-
your utilization might be higher.
Exactly, you're gonna wind up using it more.
Because it's not just a one, it's not a one size fits all.
Exactly.
Or one setup for, you're only gonna use it for a theater type style production. If
Right.
it's something that you can move around, hopefully that means that, Mr. Richard can fill the space so that it's not something like a large auditorium may be used infrequently, that hopefully this
Right.
would be used all the time for
I can
any number of
imagine it would be,
activities.
like, space is at a premium in a school, you need space to do all kinds of stuff,
Well,
right?
that's why I was asking about the number of spaces, because without that multi-purpose theater, it actually seems like we're losing a space. Like I said before, I understand the spaces themselves might be larger, but I still only see the PEG performance being the only group using that room at a time.
Right.
Or the wrestling meet is the only group that's going to be using that room at a time, even though the space itself is bigger. And so by adding that multi-purpose space, it gives us our equal number of spaces to
Right.
what we have now, which they already compete for anyway. So.
I'm just gonna add, when I think of this, this would be like maybe an opportunity where we put our district art show in there for a week or
Right.
something like that.
Yep.
So I'm hearing general consensus around a multi-purpose approach, with some, me, arguing for, let's find cheaper seating, and get it closer to the 450 seat auditorium price. But is that where everybody is?
Yeah.
Because we've
If I
already,
could add to that?
Yep.
Ms. Walsh.
you're gonna find the cheaper seating for.
So, what I would suggest in this conversation here and with the spreadsheet
Yeah.
up, so we can make these decisions.
Yeah.
Let's target the $894,000 savings with a multi-purpose room.
Okay.
With the anticipation that we're gonna find more, and develop that design and its costs, because literally this was a 5-day exercise.
Yeah.
I'm not making excuses for the numbers, but that's the reality,
Yeah.
is that we are so early in this development of these specific tangents of options, that let's target $900,000 as a savings and find this multi-purpose, because I'm hearing that same consensus, is that there's diversity in that room,
Yeah.
which is valuable, that might be worth the premium. Whether it's $800,000 or not, that's to be determined, but I think for purpose of this discussion, we target the $900,000 round number,
Okay,
and we target higher than that.
okay.
That would be my suggestion.
Sounds like a plan.
Yeah.
All right.
Can I just say one, can I just go back to the greenhouse to say one thing about the greenhouse?
Well, I was just gonna go to the greenhouse.
Oh, okay.
So,
We're looking for the 1.7.
That's right.
I would like the
I heard it.
1.7.
Yeah.
I heard the 1.7.
Oh, we're all agreed about removing the fly loft and catwalk.
Yeah, if it's not necessary for middle school productions.
The eliminating the greenhouse and outdoor classroom.
I just want to say something about the greenhouse.
Yes.
My personal opinion is it would be great to have a greenhouse. It'd be great to bring back the hydroponics program. I think the greenhouse could be funded with a grant. There's grants out there for greenhouses. So with that being the case, I would love to see a place personally, I'd like to see a place on the design where a greenhouse could be put in at a later date, or if there's needs to be something in the ground to start the process, so that it's there for when we get grant funding.
I love the idea we got Tuesday about the experimental forest. That was.
I like that.
That
was
was
really
such a
good.
good
What a great
suggestion.
idea.
Out in the-
Pollinator gardens, all sorts of things. But,
Yeah.
but
Okay, but for
I'm
now, we're gonna
confident that
put
we
that
could get a
to-
grant for that,
Yeah.
and I would like to know that there's a
I'm sure
space
Ellen
on the
is already
property
on it.
for
On the
that.
ground, right? I'm
On
just-
the
On the
grounds.
grounds, not on the roof.
You have lots of space.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. People generally.
Yeah.
Reducing the building by 6,000 square feet. I think we're all there.
Yeah.
I love that idea.
You gonna raise any of, do
So
you
if
have
you-
anything you wanna add on that idea?
So if you think mine was a cop-out, I I think we should target a little more than that, but if I'm gonna take me for a cop-out for my 900,000, I would challenge the designers to find more than 6,000. Touche,
I'll
Rick.
raise you.
So Holly's just gonna read you a list of things that we would target to get there.
Yeah.
Just so you have an idea of what we're thinking about, 'cause
When we get more than a cocktail napkin, that's when we'll know.
Holly, you can take out all the special ed sort of mixed rooms, all those flex spaces, that's euphemism for special ed.
Let's see, so we can talk about that more, but, so we did a preliminary look at spaces that we thought we might be able to, make a little bit smaller. The media center was one, right now it's actually a little bit oversized. It's a little bit larger than what we had in the program. We have been, targeting the same size media center, the same square footage for the media center that you have in the existing middle school, but we think we might be able to even tighten that up a little bit with more efficient shelving. I think the media center is pretty large. I think if it's well designed, we might be able to make it a little bit smaller and save some square footage. Sorry, I'm not finding my, what were some of the other
I
spaces?
mean, the other thing we looked at is we have two sets of team rooms
That
right
was it.
now.
Yeah.
Team rooms up at the gymnasium level and then on the ground floor. And there may be a way, I know we talked about how students wouldn't want to come out into the main street in their gym clothes necessarily and take the elevator up. So that's why we added team rooms on the upper level, but I think we can move things around in a way that we could have an elevator kind of in like a back corridor right next to the locker rooms, and then, you know, the kids could go up and down via the elevator. So we'll look at these things we haven't studied yet, so we can't guarantee we're gonna get 6,000, but we'll target some spots, we'll take it back to this group and show you, you know, if we cut this, this, and this, that equals, you know, 6,000.
That sounds great.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Field space.
Field space, this was.
This one is quick.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, is that sarcasm?
Only have 5 minutes.
Yeah, I love it when you guys get spicy.
So when we were looking at field space, we didn't want to take away any of the fields currently available to the middle school programs. They have 4 fields that they use currently. We did make some changes. One was that we would change the synthetic turf to lawn. At this point, it's a pretty big savings, but we did suggest that in this dreamy world that we're all living in right now, that if cost came in significantly under, it's something you could do as an ad alternate at the end. And look, if we have extra money, come back and say, do we want to do this? Do we want to go back and revisit a synthetic turf field? But for right now, we suggested no. We think that the track is important, so keeping the track around that field is important. There is no track on the east side of Concord right now. Not only would it benefit the students, but it would also benefit the community. We can see a lot of community use there, people out walking, people running. What that is made of, I don't know. It's probably not a competition level track, but it's something safe for the students to run on. So that would have a field in the middle,
I gotta kick
so
the extra
that,
money back. Is there such a thing?
what's that?
I got a kick out of the extra money because I didn't think there was any.
No, there may not be, but if there
There's never
is.
any extra money.
Well, we did have some in the elementary schools, so that would be a place that we might be able to look back on that. So we are suggesting that you keep a track with a lawn field in the middle that could be used for various practices and/or games. We do not want you to eliminate the multi-use lawn field that was in the design that was presented to us. We think that that's important. We have soccer, we have 6 boys soccer teams?
6 boys and girls soccer teams.
6 boys and
combined,
girls
yeah.
soccer teams at any one time. We have field hockey, we have football. All of those are fall, lacrosse.
Football spring.
Football spring?
Yeah, it's flag football, so,
flag
yeah.
football spring.
Okay, but we have regular, do you have regular football?
That's the Concord Capitals, that's the
Okay,
local.
all right. So maybe they would want to rent our space.
Right?
So Yeah, there's a lot happening at any point in the spring and fall on the schools with the students out there, and those fields are important. We currently have a baseball field at Runlet. We do not have a softball field, and that, I understand, no longer meets.
We don't meet Title IX, do we?
We do not meet Title IX. If you have one, you have to provide the other now. And that is something that has come up since Runlet baseball field was built. So in order for us to be in compliance with the newer laws, we would need to have both. So we either get rid of it and have no baseball and softball fields, or we put it in and have one of each.
Just a question on that.
Yeah.
Does Runlet currently have a baseball team?
We do not, no. I think what she's talking about is we have kind of like, there was a
Right.
baseball field there, yep.
And you had several students, 60, did you say, that maybe were interested in trying out for baseball?
I can't recall the numbers, but it's a good amount, yes, yep. Kids are definitely, baseball and softball are very, very popular sports in Concord, without a doubt.
We have more than enough kids that would.
Are there other teams in the area that you can compete against? I mean, does Merrimack Valley have a baseball team?
Bo does, I know that.
Bo
Bo
has
has a
one?
middle school
Okay.
team.
That's a very fair question, Bob. I honestly haven't, asked around, but I'm sure Scott Owen could get us that information.
Yeah, because the only thing I keep on thinking about is, I mean, you got Little League, you got Babe Ruth,
Yeah.
there are other outlets for baseball.
And we did consider that, but it's an equity issue. Not all of those, you pay for those teams, and you have to have parents or an adult or someone with a driving license that can get you to those games and those practices. And not all of our students have that ability to do that. In fact, more and more of our students are not having that ability. So this would give us a chance to introduce sports to a whole new group of students, perhaps, that currently don't have that available to them.
I'm just conscious of the repeated concerns about eliminating woodland area. I'm concerned about the cost. And what you're suggesting here, which you haven't really talked about yet, is you want two completely different separate fields with no
They would
shared
overlap
outfield.
a bit, or they'd be very close, together.
I know, but it's gonna be more space that's being cleared. It has to be, so.
Well, it's in the original plan that we've seen. It's not in addition to that.
Do you want us to pull up the site plan?
The plans we got right now show a
Yeah.
shared outfield.
Correct.
Yes, this one has a
This-
shared
this-
outfield too.
Yes, this would as well.
I think
No, you said
So-
right there, it says you want two.
So if you
separate
remember,
fields.
Brenda, there was a discussion from one of the members that said that they would
Oh, I
request
see.
that we not have the shared and make them two separate.
Just pull them
So
apart a
we-
little bit more.
Yeah, we didn't make any price
the
changes,
budget
but I
number
wanted
is this.
the budget's still the
Yeah.
same.
Stay,
but
yeah, it wouldn't change the
we
budget.
Wanted to make sure it was common.
I think another element of this that we're not acknowledging is that our middle school is very unique in that kiddos aren't cut from teams. So, the teams that you pay for, you have to try out for, and then they're absorbently expensive. And when a kiddo has a well-rounded, multifaceted education experience, which includes experiencing a team atmosphere, you don't have to be really good at it to be able to benefit from it. We know that having access to music lessons, to music theory, and to access to athletic teams increases kiddos' ability to do math, literacy, problem solving, communication, cooperation. It's all valuable stuff. And we keep talking about how we're concerned about our test scores and we're worried about, learning loss from COVID. The only way we get back from that is by increasing access to multifaceted experiences. And that's how we're gonna catch up faster, is when we give kids access to more stuff instead of reducing that. So we really do have to weigh, do we care how well our kids do when they're in this school? Are we worth investing in them? And can we admit that that's a proper return on investment when they become really well-rounded, active citizens? And because we've invested in them, they've said, my community has cared about me this whole time. I think I want to live here and raise my family here.
I didn't see which hand went up first, so I'll go Nicole and then.
So, those comments are well spoken and important. And I completely agree about the equity and the cost of club sports. However, I also have a lot of concerns about the kids who are already participating in sports at Runlet. Currently, Runlet has 3 rectangular multi-purpose fields. This plan does not include the third field. So we are adding a new set of programs fields while we are not adequately meeting
Good catch.
the needs of the sports programs they already have. There were 171 kids who participated across 6 soccer teams and a girls field hockey team last fall. And then in the spring, there were 136 kids who played girls, boys lacrosse, and flag football. And then another 133 who used the track. So the track field isn't particularly available during track season. It's available in the fall. And so as much as I would love to see us include as many sports as possible, it seems
to acknowledge what
to
already
me
exists,
that
yeah.
there's a lot of popularity and importance to the community that we already have for the fields that we need, and that would be 3 rectangular fields. And
We did discuss that, and I think that Tina and Holly can speak to
Pull
that.
up the site plan.
Let them
I think
answer
that
first,
the
please.
Sort of the overlapping outfields gives you sort of that space.
Right here?
Yeah.
Yeah,
You
just wanna
could
make it
fit in,
bigger, sorry.
if we pulled the baseball and softball a little bit further apart, you can get a third sort of green rectangle in that space.
But if the spring has girls lacrosse, boys lacrosse, and flag football, and the field and the practice field with the track is not available, spring, I imagine, is also the time for baseball and softball. So then you'd still be short that field
Yeah.
for functional use.
Is there a reason that you're saying that the field can't be used inside the track? Is it when a meet is going on?
It's track and field, so there's 133 middle schoolers who are not only running, but waiting for their next event, practicing high jump, etc. So I would imagine that the mayhem around 133 middle school students would not really allow a different team to be using the inside at the same time.
That inner field would be used for high jump, shot put, long throw.
Discus.
So,
I know this wasn't a popular idea when I mentioned it before, but there is that field at Broken Ground.
Thanks,
that-
Kate. Thanks for going
Yeah.
away. Thanks.
It's there.
Their
That is
after-school programs use that, though.
But they don't,
But the school release times are different, Brenda, I mean, Broken Ground gets out earlier than the middle school, and I understand that 21C does use that field and uses the playground, but it seems like if it were a practice field or something for the middle school, you may be able to make it as a space that could work.
Which would, in theory, work, and it may work in practice, but you also have to remember that the gym classes at Broken Ground use that field for outside gym classes in the
Right.
spring and the
But
fall.
that's during the day. I mean,
Well, it would
all
be
of
at the same time. Oh, I see.
I'm talking about what,
The after
Ms.
school.
Fox is talking about with the after-school athletic, teams.
They'd be there
needing
later
extra
than the
field.
elementary kids.
They could be there after Broken
Yeah,
Ground
that's
goes
true.
home. You may have Broken Ground kids on the playground at periods of time for the 21C program or something like that, but it seems like that could be an extra practice school field for the middle school to help
Yeah.
alleviate, because otherwise it's sitting.
well, and I made sure to go out there before that Q&A
She
and
did?
ask all of the parents who were out there, who was using the field, why do they have to ask to use the field? That, a soccer field is not even how it is on that field. The whole entire field is dust. So
Yeah.
it's not even usable or safe for any soccer team. It's positioned differently and it's out there now. So it's actually going here, and then here's the baseball. So then if this was revamped to a usable field, then that would be a third space as a soccer field. Or could you make this a baseball field and put this soccer field further down here? Because that's really kind of where it was.
I see Brenda wincing a little bit, and I know that property behind Broken Ground is a sensitive subject for that community, and I think that Broken Ground staff might push back a little bit.
No one was using that space back there.
Friend, I'm on your side on this, but I'm just saying, revamping that field for shared use with the middle school, we will get angry pushback. I'm not saying that should necessarily stop us,
Right.
but we should be prepared, because I guess it's named after somebody or something like that.
A teacher
and-
that passed away.
But
Yeah.
it's not, I mean, it's a dirt field, it's like it's dust.
It's not well
If it
maintained,
was
I
named
will add
after
that.
me,
So,
Lisa?
thank you.
Doesn't mean it makes
Um,
sense.
I do agree about equity in all of your points. However, there is no reduction in what we're offering because there currently is not a baseball team.
That's true.
So we're not taking anything away from an existing program. And I agree with these comments, and when I think about the taxpayers, when I think about fairness, and there are spring and fall sports that are populated. If we want to save, and this is a pretty substantial savings, and
Yeah.
it's something that in the future, if we wanted to go to and ask for a grant or go ask for a sponsor to pay for the field, and then we get, some big corporation to have their name on the field.
Right,
I
right.
think, this is, $1 million to save. I say we go for it.
Well, then we're cutting a field that they currently have.
Well, we can still have grass there. We can still have a field for.
So it could be another multi-use play field,
A lawn.
lawn field.
And what would that cost?
Yes. That is the $769.
Back for that.
Yep.
So, I mean, I'm jumping ahead a little bit
No,
here
it's
because.
I'm sorry, it's 600,000 for a multi-use lawn.
Oh, that's the
No, that's
synthetic
the,
part.
that's a
saving.
credit, that's a
That's
credit.
changing it.
Changing
Yeah,
it from
sorry.
turf.
Sorry.
So,
Thank you.
so I'm gonna hit a couple of them here.
Okay.
Cause we have the line item to eliminate the turf field, and then as you jump down below to 9D, it says add irrigation, which we're not taking. But to Ms. Boucher's point, the fields out there, because of the soil that's out there, are dust. So we're gonna build, we're gonna have Harvey build us these brand new wonderful fields and not put irrigation on them. And every one of them is gonna turn to dust, cause it's the same soil that's back there that's right here.
Right.
And the thing that worries me a little bit is, I mean, $600,000 is a big number. I saw something online, I think it was the New Hampshire Municipal Association was talking about building fields, municipal quality fields. And Jack can probably get us some information from the city, if Matt doesn't already have it, but they say that maintaining a grass field, not necessarily the irrigation cost, but just maintaining it because of cutting and the fertilizer and everything else that you've gotta do, costs about $27,000, I think was the number a year to maintain that. A turf field costs about $7,000 a year. So you got a delta of about $20,000 a year to maintain a field. If we use our 40-year thing, that's $800,000. In today's dollars, it's $600,000 to add a turf field. A turf field has a utilization rate that is nearly double that of a grass field. A grass field, it says, can hold about 200 events a year, 200 games a year on it, where a turf field is almost 400. So I think that if we were to get rid of the turf field, I think in some ways we're basically committing to spending more money down the road with our tax dollars year after year after year to pay for a grass field that we're gonna get less usage out of. And if we don't irrigate it, is gonna turn to a dust bowl. And even the rest of the fields, if we don't put irrigation out there, they're gonna be as bad or worse than what's over at Runlet right now. They're not gonna be playing fields.
My only question on that, Dana, is I've never heard of a turf field that lasted 40 years.
No, but you're still
So
gonna
you're gonna have to do it again in 15 or 20, and it's gonna be another
So
600,000.
another
Yeah, million,
benefit
yeah.
of a turf field is that when the kids go outside for recess year round, they'll have, they won't be tearing up a field during mud season, which is a pretty significant.
Or it'll be off
time
limits like
frame.
Memorial Field is, Memorial Field that you can't use.
So I think that the idea of including it as an alternate is probably a good idea. I think there's a lot of advantages to it, but it is expensive.
This is a very complicated, topic, and we could spend a lot of time, but I do want to advocate when I think of our students, when I think of recess, our kids go outside for recess, they're going to continue to go outside for recess, but the benefits of a synthetic turf is that, you can use it all the time. It's not just for athletic events, but I would want that for my kids for recess. So ask Linda, you don't have to answer this, but the amount of times we missed out on recess, the field was too wet or muddy or those things. And, I need my middle school kids to go outside. And when you do have a synthetic turf, you can put them out there, the snow melts and all that. So I'm just sharing that, but I know it's a very complicated topic.
Mr. Richards.
Well, just to follow on, it's been a few years since my kids were in middle school, but not that many years. They go run on the broken paving stones that are out in front. They go absolutely, run every single moment they have to do that. And I think you guys are laughing because you know what I mean.
Yes,
right?
yeah. I mean, we do need recess space.
So I hear you on that one. I am really in desperate need of more information on this before I want to make a decision. This is much more complicated. I agree. Every single field I've seen that doesn't have irrigation or something like that becomes dust and mud. I mean, where the high school team practices at Runlet now for football is just, find your couple blades of grass. And if you go to the back of the Millbrook Broken Ground, it's dust. Go to what they call the soccer field behind Beaver Meadow, it is just packed brown dirt. That's all it is. So I would want us to consider, if we're not gonna have a turf field, and even if we are for all our other fields, we have to come up with a plan of maintaining that. And that'll include, if not irrigation under the ground, it's irrigation above the ground. And so I think I'd like to see more information on options and costs on that one.
Right, the sustainability of each option.
So,
water usage.
what I'm hearing is maybe we put turf aside until we see where the budget for the fields come in. I think we might need a second look at the middle school's actual use of fields to see whether we need a third multi-use field. At this point, is what I'm hearing from people, to understand if we're gonna have enough space, and then we can figure out where it goes. More option, and that the irrigation system might be a smart investment. I think we're gonna get more from you on that, yes.
Sorry, just another concern, and I haven't done my homework on synthetic turf, but we're spending a lot of time talking about zero emissions, et cetera. I have a concern about microplastics. I don't know about PFAS, and if there's what are the implications of having plastic on the ground, not only for the ground, but for the students? And I have to do a little research on that too, but I think if we're trying to teach the kids about environmental sustainability, we've got to be worrying about human health too. So I haven't looked at any longitudinal data about human impact of turf, but I think we should bear that in mind too.
There's just so much debate about turf versus lawn, including like increased injury to kiddos who use it versus because it's, it's on a base that isn't, normal ground. So you wind up having like speed impact injuries happen a lot more often.
So I think just
yeah.
for the sake of time, I
No,
think we
but
said
yeah,
we're
I'm just
gonna
saying-
put that off until we see where the budget
there's
comes in.
so much we could talk about. that we
Yes,
don't
Lisa, I
right
think that
now.
comes down to sustainability
Yeah.
as well as water usage, fertilizers, things like that.
Am I making any adjustments to this?
But it's also cradle to grave, like what do
I
you
think
do
not
with
yet.
the end of it?
Other
Okay,
than
so I'm not saying
taking
yes
the
to
system.
irrigation.
Sustainability.
So,
I would
Just
say, I feel like, can we, if we're going to discuss usage, I think eliminating the baseball and softball field right now, just for yucks. you know, because if we're trying to accommodate the programs that already exist.
Well, we'd still need to add a field for that, so.
All right.
Which is why I figured we should just leave it in until we get some.
Yeah, good call. Yep.
Numbers on that.
But the irrigation, you don't wanna add it, but you
Do
wanna
people
explore
wanna
it.
add the irrigation now, or?
Yeah,
we
I
have
would
to
say
if we're
add
gonna
it
keep
now.
the
while we
lawn.
discuss it.
Yes, yeah, all right, so put that in. All right.
And the
Okay.
last thing was, the basketball court, it's on the tar, I believe, right? Or on the asphalt somewhere, that the students asked for this. This was a student ask. It's fairly short money. I hate to say that, because no money is short money, but, in the grand scheme of things, this was an ask for the students during recess. I could see pickup games happening there, and we thought that that was something that should
The
stay.
Keach Park courts are full morning, noon, and night.
This will be too when the kids aren't in session, you know,
Oh, yeah.
weekends
You'll have
and.
neighborhood students, or
Yeah.
kids over there, yeah.
Huge
families.
resource. I feel like it's an essential.
Team sport, lifelong.
Yeah, exactly.
So, to jump to section D on our worksheets, I'm gonna jump to, my understanding is that there is a new option for a ramp that is both inside and significantly cheaper. So can you walk us through that?
You have the image
Yep,
for it
they're,
that we
they're
did
in
today?
there.
Okay.
Wow.
There are 4 images actually, and maybe start with the 3D view. Go back.
Right here? Oh, there?
Motion sickness, Jack.
I'm testing you
We'll
all.
start with the 3D view.
For
and
10 of
then we'll
8.
go to the plan.
But I'm not driving for a change.
Yeah. That looks cool.
Yeah, so this is a view from coming in the entry. So you're looking towards the west, kind of down the main street. So the idea here was to design the ramp in a way that it really becomes kind of an amenity for the whole school. So the idea is the ramp has sort of 3 runs. So you sort of ramp up towards the west and go to the next image. And then the stairs and the ramp both meet on a platform that kind of overlooks the cafeteria. And this could become kind of a platform or a stage where kids could present to, their fellow students in the auditorium. But then, the ramp continues up and the stair continues up, and they both meet kind of in the same general area at the top of the bridge there. So it kind of defines a zone kind of on the west side of the main street, that's the cafeteria. But it also is, a ramp that gets you up or down to the second floor, and becomes this kind of community gathering space slash stage.
Is there
Kids
another
could sit
view?
on it to eat.
So, no, that was it.
What's that?
Oh, that's so great.
And what was the price tag on this one?
Keith?
Oh, I have it.
483? 400.
So 483,
484.
What?
Instead
Yeah.
of 3 million?
Yeah.
and then there was.
I like it.
Thank you.
So, we.
Yeah,
Right.
that's awesome.
Can you go back to your other slide?
Oh, back to the image?
Yes, please. Is there adequate space on the right side to go back Main Street for, that is the main entrance that all of the kids are coming through to get into the school. And if you're not going up,
Go back.
that
One
looks
more.
tight to me, and I just want you to check it.
It's actually pretty wide. There's a plan.
It's not
if
the
you
width,
go
it's the
back.
Oh,
height.
sorry.
Yeah.
Don't look. Nobody look.
It's, at the narrowest point, it's still, I think, oh goodness, more than 20 feet. So and then kids can travel on either side. They could travel, like if you come in the front entrance, you could travel kind of along what we're calling the loggia. So see where the columns are? Yeah.
Oh, down here? Down
Down
here?
here, you
Okay.
can travel on that
So you
side, or you can travel on the north side. And like I said, at the tightest point, at the bottom of the ramp, it's like 20 feet wide. So I'll go to the first floor plan,
I
Jack.
think it looks so
The
good.
first floor plan?
Yeah, go back one more
Do
page.
you need the
So that's the
stairs
first
there?
floor plan.
It's to, I think, accommodate.
Well, I'm asking, like, where do those stairs go to, up to the ramp, right?
They go up to the gym. So if you're coming in and you wanna go up a staircase to the gym, you would go up that first
Oh,
little
so
run.
the stairs go that way?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
Okay.
And then there's a ramp.
So it takes you up to the gym or the
That's a
balcony.
bridge.
That is so cool.
Let me go back to that one. Is that okay? All
I
right.
know. I'm hitting my wall.
So, it's just, if you are on foot, it's a quicker way to the gym, but you can still get to the gym from the ramp by the bridge.
I'm sorry. Sorry.
Yes.
Say it again.
Yes.
Yes.
So, I mean, to Pam's question, do we need the stairs there?
And could we just do a ramp?
Can we just do a ramp? Like, why not
Everybody's-
just do a ramp?
Well, people might not wanna walk all the way down and back up.
It is a longer
It's a shortcut-
distance
It's a
to
shortcut.
walk.
And, you know, the ramp is, I think, I'm not sure how wide the ramp is right now, but the ramp is 5 feet. So if you did have a lot of people going up there, you know, they could split. Half could go up the ramp and half could go up the stair. So, you know, I think it would accommodate
long is it?
big groups. It's long.
300 feet?
Do you want to
We
go
saw
back
it in
to
the
the
plan.
floor plan?
Close your eyes to the plan.
240.
This right here?
Yeah, it's around 240.
250 feet, something like that, yeah.
Yeah. Each of those sections is 30 feet long, so we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6,
There's
7, 8,
90
9.
feet there.
It's 270 feet long.
And does it
without
go to the
landing.
third floor?
Yeah.
No.
It doesn't go to the third floor, no.
It just goes to the second floor.
And what's on the third floor? Classes, right?
Right now, it's, the only exploratory is on the third floor. Well, there's art and there is world language classrooms up there.
And students that are mobility challenged would have to take the elevator from the second to the third.
Correct.
Correct.
There's word language on the second floor too.
Yeah, there are some world language on the second.
And how many elevators are there again?
2.
So you could potentially look at taking away one of the elevators if you wanted to save money. I'm just
No.
putting it out there.
No.
Like, alright.
That feels like an accessibility issue that we don't wanna.
Where are the elevators? Where are the elevators?
How many people do the
Could you go back
elevators
somebody?
accommodate?
They're not.
They're very large.
Okay.
Can you just go back to
was gonna bring the
I'd say it's probably
dimensions.
8 people that can get in
2,500
there.
pound capacity, something like that.
8, 10 people,
3,000.
depending on
Yeah,
how
3,000.
size
I would think
people
that
there are.
So,
Probably.
They gotta go to the first floor slide for the elevator.
Pound kids.
They wanted to see where the elevator is.
oh, one more.
The elevator's in the center, so go down and over to the left a little bit. That is the large
Oh, yeah.
elevator.
That little X is an
The X.
elevator.
Left.
And the other
Right here?
elevator
Yep.
is diagonally to the right, outside of the auditorium.
Right by the-
And
there you
that's
go,
the
Brenda.
smaller
Yep.
elevator.
Right here.
But even the smaller elevator is large enough to accommodate a stretcher. So the smaller elevator is already really big. So I think you have, good capacity in your elevators.
My guess is if you've got a kid on crutches or we're using one of the little scooters that they put their knee on when you got a foot in a cast, they're gonna wanna take the elevator, they're not gonna wanna take a 300-foot ramp.
Right.
Probably, yeah.
And, so I don't know, I mean.
10 of his best friends will wanna
Yeah.
go with him.
Part of me would say is put in, I don't know enough to speak about the size of the ramp, but if it's only 5 feet wide, it's not the New England Aquarium. It's a smaller ramp, so I would think that, the ability to have a elevator that can fit 10, 12, 14 people, somebody maybe that needed accessibility would be kind of the hero if 10 of their closest friends could get to ride up with them, because if not, everybody has access.
They're only gonna be able to bring one. I've experienced this.
Not like the old Volkswagen days, how many guys you could get in it?
Yeah.
Lisa? This is about universal design, it's not just simply for, those students who have an injury. And I really think that the ramp will fundamentally be more popular than you all can imagine. I think people are gonna like that ramp. And it's something that everyone can use, even if it takes a few more seconds to get up. I think it's gonna be seen as number one, super cool, and everyone can utilize it.
I tend to agree with what Lisa just said. My one concern is not with the idea, is just the width of it. If you're gonna have people coming up and down within 5 feet of, that's.
Could 2 students in wheelchairs pass each other in that?
5 feet's the minimum.
Carefully.
But I don't think they could bypass each other, because the 5 feet's out to help, it doesn't take into account the railings come inboard, another 3-4 inches. So you really got a net of
We can-
about 32,
we can design it
30
so
I was
that
gonna say, you could probably make it a little
That's
wider.
the
right?
criteria
Make
is
it-
to have
make it
two
six,
people in
6.5,
wheelchairs
7.
pass one another, we can make it a little
5,
bit
6,
wider.
6 feet.
We'll-
It's not
we'll
gonna
make
change
it
the cost that much.
For two people
So,
to pass with
Yeah,
accessibility.
6 or 8 inches
It's
is gonna make
very
a
close,
Yeah.
so
It wouldn't
it
be-
doesn't.
So, but I think we
seem
can
to
all
me
say that
like
this is a
would be-
better option than an
It is pretty much.
exterior
Oh,
ramp.
for sure.
And we would like to move forward.
So no to the exterior ramp,
Yep.
yes to add this, and we are not eliminating the smaller elevator. Okay. All right.
The other things on this list, I think we can all agree that we can put off, we can go with
Polished concrete for now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We'll put that on your add alternate.
Can I
'cause
ask
that-
you a question about the cell phone booster?
Yes.
And I asked this as a parent who had a child who had a medical emergency at Millbrook and was called there, and then my spouse, who I just left a message for, saying I'm running to Millbrook to pick up our child, couldn't get in touch with me because the cell phones don't work in those buildings.
Oh, that's true.
And it caused, and I just think it's, in times of emergencies and things like that, the cell phones don't work in those buildings at all.
And I know Krista lost phone service, Krista McAuliffe School has lost phone service before and had to rely on using staff cell phones.
That happens
Yeah.
on occasion.
And it just seems like in a time of emergency or anything that people, I mean, I know the staff wants to be able to use their phones and.
The neighborhood could have better cell reception.
Yeah, I think partially
Which
the
it
walls in
needs.
the buildings,
Yeah.
you know,
I'm for
'cause
keeping that.
It's not just the neighborhood, it's the walls and the
I know,
buildings
I'm
and things, but it-
sorry.
you know.
I agree with you. I was in Millbrook a few weeks ago and couldn't get,
You can't do
walked out
anything.
and
You
got
can't do anything.
50
Yeah.
text
Your phone goes
messages.
SOS.
Yeah.
So I'm
people
hearing
can
that we
add
would
the-
like to keep the cell phone booster.
I just imagine.
But can you amend that?
scenarios, you know.
We wanna add for cell phone lockers too, so the kids can lock them up.
Yeah.
Mr. Richard already enforces
They
that.
get them back when they leave?
That
Yeah.
is already
They,
his
they
rule.
keep them in their lockers, for the most part.
It's about teaching kids responsibility and making good choices, really, that's what it comes down to. And they've done a good job.
I'll just suggest this, I think we probably ought to look at this more globally, and we're not gonna wait 3 years to do it. So we'll probably work together to try to look at all schools and look at the boosters, so it may be something that you won't have to worry about when the time comes. So it might be a savings, rather than, because if you're gonna say you're gonna fix that,
Everybody else,
everybody's
yeah.
watching, well, how come you're not doing mine? So that's the way I look at that, I wonder if it should come out and just say, let's start targeting now, look at grants, that
That's
kind of
smart,
thing.
yeah.
Because we're already doing the CBs, they'll be this year, but
Just to, we have had a very lengthy petition submitted by abutters asking for a fence, so I think that's probably
That's a yes.
something reasonable.
I'm all for
Precast
asphalt.
concrete, I don't know the answer to that. Anyone have thoughts?
I want
I
to
don't
talk
even know
about
this
that,
is
talked about that today. the
I have a
curbing.
very strong opinion on curb, actually.
Yes.
Oh, there we go.
Which
Get
is-
nerdy on us, Nicole.
Oh, we
Which
were
is-
supposed to choose one of these. Okay.
Yes,
Yes.
which is
Okay.
installing asphalt curb will be a gigantic mistake. It will get ripped out
It'll be
by
destroyed.
plows.
Yearly.
You will just spend that money over and over and over again. I honestly have no idea why you would ever spend extra money on a concrete curb in New Hampshire, because those are also not plow resistant. Granite is a rock, lasts a really long time. In fact, when you wanna rip up your parking lot and redo it, you pull out the curb and you put it back in.
Yep.
So that's a cost you will expend once. That's my take.
All right, so.
I like that take.
We're leaving granite.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Public transportation.
We've dealt with the ramp, we've dealt with that. All
This
right,
guy all day.
No, no,
So just the snow melt,
no.
No snow mount. Sorry, Matt.
and then the epoxy terrazzo, so
No.
We'll put that on our
you
alternate
can put that on
list.
your alternate, that's
Yeah.
fine. Yep, you don't have to make that decision, we agreed with that, right?
Yeah.
When we talked earlier.
We can wait.
Yeah, we can wait.
We can wait.
Just because
That's
that's
not a
like
deciding
airport, that
factor.
stuff lasts forever.
Yes.
Versus
Although
some
polished
challenges with
concrete,
it.
we did that when we built the friendly kitchen, and it holds up really well too. So
So
it
you
gets
say
a
no
lot
for
of.
Yeah,
Lot
we're
of
gonna
foot
say-
traffic.
Well, no, you're gonna say yes for now, you wanna take that out, and if there's
Yes,
money.
take
Yes,
that out.
take that out, yeah.
Alright,
All right.
Thank you, everyone. This went long, but I think this is really good guidance for the board as we.
Thank you, building committee.
Can the members of the board, I know people have to leave, but can members of the school board just briefly,
School board.
school board members, can you please go into the Dewey room for a non-public session?
Yeah.
If I could have a motion to do that really quick. Moved by Mr. Second by Ms. Boucher. Mr. Richards. Ms. Hastings.
Yes.
Yes. Yes. Ms. Hill? Yes, yes. Okay, go to the Dewey room. You guys take a few minutes. Go.